Oh, what's going on? I'm Brian, though. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan. Jimmy, the NFL schedule has officially been released. We know all the games, all the dates for all the teams, and the Colts don't have one primetime game. Not a one. Not a one. Now, before I become the bad guy, I'll give the floor to Community Jimmy here to start off. Talking about how the Colts have been robbed and we don't get one game. I'm just anticipating. I don't know what your actual stance is. What do you think about this?
So we did an over-under yesterday, and I'm not as irate as you would expect, but our over-under was 2.5. I thought they might at least get one for a handful of reasons. Whether they deserve it for the sake of, a young quarterback, and you can make the same argument for the Texans because they didn't get one either. But the other avenue for them, I thought, might be, all right, well, Jacksonville was the division winner. There's division rivalries within the South, obviously. Maybe they'll get a pair up there, and they'll be the beneficiary of a Jaguars-Colts Sunday night showdown or Thursday night showdown or something like that. Not a one?
Nothing.
A one for the horseshoe?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Goose egg.
A little disrespectful.
That's one view of it. Another view, which is to take a step away from Indianapolis and a step away from the Colts, which is the team. I get it. They don't deserve one. That's the cold, hard truth of this. They don't deserve one. When you start thinking about this is a, 4-12-1 team that has a complete project at quarterback and rookie Anthony Richardson? No, that doesn't equal a primetime game. I mean, really, don't put yourself in the shoes of a Colts fan, because I know how any fan, is going to react like this. Put yourself in the shoes of the league or in the shoes of these TV executives. Who would you rather showcase? Would it be the Colts, or would it be one of these teams that has a ton of primetime games like the Chiefs or the Cowboys or the Bills or the Chargers? There are way better teams to showcase in prime time than the Colts. That's really what it comes down to. And think about this, too, for anyone who's just, in eye-rolling mode, or maybe they've just escalated to throwing things at the radio at this point, Jimmy. I don't know. But ask yourself this. We've got flex scheduling now with Monday Night Football. We've had it with Sunday Night Football. Jimmy, what do you think the chances are that a Colts game is flexed to prime time later in the year?
40%.
40%?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Now, here's why.
Okay, all right,
so again,
let's hear it.
I feel like that, you might laugh at this next sentence, which, what else is new? I feel like for me and my angle with all this, that's rather conservative. And the reason I'm banking on the 40% there is if Anthony Richardson gets an early start, right? And I know there's, with him, with any project quarterback, there's going to be a bunch of ifs tied to every sentence, whether it's when he starts or whether it's, the Colts benefit in new ticket sales and prime time action because of Anthony Richardson. Maybe this is and you look at the teams that they're grouped around that did not get primetime games. Okay, Colts, show us something. Show us you're worthy of a primetime game. That's what flexing is there for, right? To be able to create more compelling action and must-see TV at the end of the season or towards the back end of the schedule. So if you had Anthony Richardson balling out, it's like, okay, this guy is clearly, and him and Jonathan Taylor are taking the South by storm, making some noise. Yeah, I think he could be worthy of a primetime game. The reason I go less than 50 is because you and I have been, you more cautious than I, cautious of the fact that you're asking a lot of a rookie, particularly one that has as many things as you need to clean up as Richardson does, to be able to contend for an AFC South title right away. I feel like that's asking a lot.
Okay. I will set it a little lower.
Okay.
I'll set the percentage chance that a Colts game is flexed into prime time at 0.08. I'll put it at the legal limit. That's what I'll put it at. Jimmy, you're a gambler here, okay? If you are owning the Jimmy Cook worldwide sports book, you know what I mean? You're operating this. And you know that the general public, I'll work on it. The J. Cook Sportsbook Extravaganza. It's a working title.
Sure, we'll get there.
Okay, but the betting public could hammer you for a line that's set improperly, right?
Correct.
So if you have it at a 40% chance, I am hammering whatever the odds would be. I don't know if it's minus, 170. I don't know how to do the percentage exactly, but if I have to lay a little juice of minus 160 or whatever it would be that the Colts don't have a game flexed in the prime time, I'm betting everything I own.
Okay, well, conversely, though, with your absolutely ludicrous 0.8%, there is a path. you know there's a path there, and the path is pretty simple. The Jaguars and the Colts, again, I'm not saying that, maybe you're right. Maybe 40 was a little too aggressive. Again, I went under 50 because I understand what has to happen for them to be flexed. They would have to be a contender in their own division. Jacksonville would have to once again take a leap forward to the point, wow, Jaguars are right there with the tops of the AFC, and the Colts are still hanging around with them. Then all of a sudden you have maybe a showdown that would get flexed in primetime. But now that I say this, and as I'm making this argument to you, I'll be honest, I'm on the wrong tab, so I don't know. Maybe the Colts and Jaguars game, as I look here at my phone, has no possibility to be flexed. Let's see.
No, it doesn't.
No,
yeah.
Okay, so never mind. So, okay, all right. Everybody took my money. We'll take it away. I'll go back. I'll go back down. I'll say 15% because that was my only card. My only card was Jaguars Colts. And now that I look at it, yeah, you're right. There's no real path for them to be able to, because once again, for the umpteenth straight year, the AFC South schedule is almost wrapped up in the first 6 weeks of the season. That's the thing that's more irritating for me, is I asked for one thing from schedule makers for this Colts team. Just one. Space out the division setup so that we have a little bit of competition on the back end. And instead of getting something flavorful like Colts Jags to end the season, we get Colts Texans.
Well, listen, let's table Colts and primetime for a second to focus in on what you just brought up. We talked about this about a week ago, which is, how would you like to see the schedule unfold? What would be best case scenario for the Colts? And we agreed, Jimmy. We thought that division games later in the season would be better because it's a favorable division, and who knows when Anthony Richardson starts games. If he starts games midway through the season, I'd like him to get a little bit of time, maybe a start or two, before you get into the bulk, the meat of your division schedule. And you have some favorable matchups. You have the Texans, obviously. Who knows what we're going to see from the Titans this season. The Jags are good, but they're not a juggernaut. So I would have liked to have seen the divisional games later in the season, but 4 of the first 6 games are in the AFC South. That's not great. I don't like that draw of it, just based on them having a rookie quarterback who's most likely not going to start week 1.
I would rather, in a perfect world, and I think we're both on the same page with this, if you want to have some early South games, that's fine. If you want to have in the first 6 weeks, have 3 AFC South games, which they do have that. They're going to go week 1 and week 2, hosting the Jags, then in Houston, then week 5, they're hosting the Titans. Okay, there you go. You got 3 in the first 5. All right, that's fine. Don't have the Jaguars, then week 6. Space it out. Why do we have to use it? And it happens across the board in divisions where, sometimes the schedule's not perfect, and that's fine. But in a division that, even though Jacksonville appears to be the top dog, is still pretty bad, and you never know who's going to come out of it, I would love to see your at least one matchup per team in the South in the back half of this schedule versus knocking out Jacksonville in the first 6 weeks. They did the Titans and Colts that way a couple years ago, where it was they played twice in the first 6 weeks. Why we got to rush all this? Space it out, schedule makers. Come on.
Well, and it's when you look at the other teams in the division, it's topsy-turvy. So I'm looking at the Titans schedule. They only have one of their first 9 games is in the division. I think they play the Colts in week 5. Everything else, Saints, Chargers, Browns, Bengals, Ravens, Falcons, Steelers, Bucks. 1 game in their first 9 is in the division. The Titans have 4 of their final 6 games in the division. I would prefer that for the Colts.
Me too.
I would prefer the Titans schedule compared to what the Colts have. And listen, it's similar, right? If you look at Will Levis, I don't know when he starts games this season. It depends on Tannehill, how well he's playing, how well the team's playing, Tannehill's health. I don't know when Will Levis begins to start games, even if it is this season. But I would rather have if let's just say he starts week 10, it's basically midway through the season. I would rather have all those divisional games at the end because I think it's a better situation for you, and you could play your way into the playoffs by doing great in your division. And I know that seems kind of radical to some people, but it's true. Look at Jacksonville. Jacksonville was 3-14, and a bulk of their wins last season they were in the division. They went 9-8. They didn't go, something crazy like 14-3 or something. They were 9-8. And one of the last games of the year was at home. It was the last game of the season, hosting the Titans to play their way in. So, yeah, I would rather have those divisional games late, especially if you have a year one starting quarterback.
There's an expectation, at least nationally, and I would say even through Vegas. I'd have to see where the Colts stack up in terms of the rest of the league in terms of win totals. They're at 6.5, but there's the aspect of this of you want to put the Colts possibly with their divisional games early in the year when they're still possibly, kicking for the division when you expect them to be bad versus at the end of the year where they could be mailing it in to try and get up there for a higher draft pick. So I could see why possibly the schedule makers put it this way, where there are meaningful games on the front part of the schedule. That way they don't give up at the end of the year, even though it could be against a divisional foe.
Well, they don't care about the Colts. I mean, let's just be honest. They're just scheduling games. If we're talking about primetime games, that's different, but they're just scheduling games. It's just the way it works out. A lot of this is just coincidence. Not everything is detailed and, thought out and planned out. The way the Titans have one divisional game in their first 9, the schedule makers didn't plan that out. And the way the Colts have 4 of their first 6 games in the division, that's just the draw. I mean, that's just the way it goes. But if you look at the primetime situation here, for anyone who's belly aching about the Colts not getting one, why would you schedule the Colts in primetime early in the season where they don't have a ton of losses yet, and Anthony Richardson might not be starting? You could have Gardner Minshew and the Colts off a 4-12-1 season in primetime early in the year. No, thank you. And then when the losses most likely mount up toward the end, you're not going to schedule them in primetime either. So I know there's some shock factor here, but I mean, they were one of 4 teams that don't have primetime games. The Texans, that makes a lot of sense to me as well. Atlanta won 7 games. They've got some offensive firepower. They're not in prime time. I just think it's very knee-jerk to be a fan of a team and be like, we didn't get one game. It's like, are you clamoring to see Atlanta? Are you ticked off you don't get to see Bijan Robinson? Are you mad you don't get to see C.J. Stroud? I mean, they're just better options for primetime matchups.
Here's my issue. And again, to clarify this, the audience knows this. I support my city. I love my city. I am not a beacon of Colts fandom sitting here in this chair.
Community Jimmy.
Right, but when I look down south and I see the Titans, who, again, I get it, were a little bit better than the Colts last year in terms of what they did, right? They were in a conversation to potentially win the division for way longer than the Colts were. I mean, I know there were a couple plays here or there. That's football. That's life, where maybe they're winning the South last year and the Chargers actually finally win a playoff game instead of blowing the 20-0 lead that they had against the Jaguars in the wild card round. I digress. But I look at the schedule and I look at one in particular, and there's arguments. Maybe we're splitting hairs. Maybe we're not. But why would the Titans get a Monday Night Football primetime game against the Dolphins in Week 14? What are you banking on there? Okay, you're banking on the idea that potentially Ryan Tannehill is a bounce-back year, that Derrick Henry is his old self and he stays healthy. And oh, by the way, it's the Dolphins. They're one of the most fun teams in the National Football League. They have weapons all over the place. That makes sense. Sure, let's give them a Monday night game right there. Week 14 for the Colts, it's the same thing, except you have the Bengals, a team that was in the AFC Championship game last year, against Cincinnati. You're going Colts, Bengals. I can find matchups on the schedule when I look at the rest of the South and point to it and be like, really? Like, we didn't deserve one?
That's your one hope for flex
and
right
Titans
there, by
two?
the way.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I was looking at it. Why I can go 10 to 15% is that's the best hope, is that the Colts are somewhat relevant and the Bengals are chasing something or in a tight race with, I don't know, the Browns or the Ravens, to the point that game matters for both teams.
Right.
Yes, you're right.
I would look at it like this. You brought up the Dolphins. The Dolphins have 3 primetime games. And like you said, Jimmy, they play a fun style of ball. When Tua Tagovailoa is healthy and upright, you got Tyreek Hill, you got Jalen Waddle, you got some razzle dazzle, you got some speed, right? Like you have a whoa factor when the Dolphins are on. Some of their games turn into a track meet, and that team has 3 primetime games. They're not featured more. The game you brought up against the Titans, that's a prime candidate to be flexed out if Tennessee is not any good this season, which might be the case. So the Dolphins might end up with less than 3. Mm-hmm. But going in, that to me makes way more sense to be like the Dolphins only have 3 compared to the Colts don't have 1. I can make a much better argument that the Colts don't deserve any than that the Dolphins only deserve 3.
To clarify, I'm not. I know that's not your overall point, but I want to make sure that people know my stance has nothing to do with the Dolphins. It's more the Titans, right? We're saying 2 different things totally. In that regard. We're not disagreeing with one another,
right?
And I get your point. You could probably make a case for Miami stronger so because they are within the top of the AFC. Well, not the very top, but they're in the conversation where hey, maybe Miami takes that leap forward this year. Maybe Tua stays healthy. Maybe they really make things tough on Buffalo and New York.
They are close to the tippy top there.
Sure,
Jake.
sure. I'm not disrespecting them enough to the point that it's anything other than Tua and what he can do and how he can stay healthy. I've been over that. I love Miami's roster. I love what they did this offseason. They're a fun team. You talk about league pass teams. Well, for NFL Sunday ticket teams, Dolphins are right there. The other one that bugs me, again, looking at the Titans, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I want your thoughts on this first.
Yeah.
Let's say for the sake of argument, by middle of the season, Anthony Richardson is starting. Do you buy into the idea of having 2 rookie quarterbacks face off against one another? Like under the lights? Like, does that matter to you at all? Does that move the needle for you?
It could be good as long as the records aren't in the toilet.
Okay, I get that. So this is week 9. Again, it's at the Titans. I'm attacking them. This would have been a prime matchup. To my knowledge, I mean, it's not late in the season enough anyway, but Thursday night games can't be flexed down anyway, right? They're where they are. So this is just when they made the schedule, what they could have done differently. Titans Steelers. I mean, I get it. I know it's Pittsburgh. It's a bigger market. I don't want to watch that game. By week 9, that has the chance to be a putrid Thursday night matchup, which happens every year. I'd rather roll the dice on Bryce Young versus Anthony Richardson in a Colts-Texans draft pick showdown.
And
That's
a Frank Reich return.
Yes, Frank Reich redemption potentially. Come on.
I mean, hey, listen, I hear what you're saying. I think
that's a good storyline. You got to admit that
sure.
idea is a good storyline.
It absolutely is. But the problem is those records could be bad.
You're right. They very well could be. But it's middle of the season. It's middle of the season, right? Like hopefully bad is not 2-7 for both teams. Hopefully it's 4-5. Maybe I'm asking too much there.
Yeah, that's to me. If you're the TV executives and I'm thinking, hey, if the schedule is unveiled and you run right to, all right, Amazon's like, oh, what we got on Thursday night, and ESPN's like, all right, what's the Monday night schedule look like? What is your honest thought if it's Colts Panthers middle of the year? My first thought is Anthony Richardson even starting yet? It's not a done deal. There's a decent chance he would be, but it's not set in stone. So you could have Bryce Young against Gardner Minshew, and it's combined, I don't know, 5 wins at the time. That's rough.
This is a conversation we had earlier in the week, and I was hoping we would get to it at some point with you today when they announced in the early little nuggets that were passed out by the NFL that the Colts were headed over to Germany. We had a conversation with, I believe it was Scott Agnes that day. It was either Scott Agnes or James Boyd. Welcome to the carousel. But whoever it was, we were talking about the fact
Who do you like most, by the way, Jay Cook?
Oh, Brian, you know it's you. It's always been you.
Wow.
I better not tune in next week and hear you say something else, Jimmy Cook.
Of course
there,
not.
huh?
No, of course not. But anyway, week 10, Brian, I'll be honest, and maybe you'll totally push back on this.
Okay.
Unless the Colts publicly in some way say he's not ready, I would be very surprised that Anthony Richardson was not starting by that Germany game unless Gardner Minshew has the team rolling in a way that it's like, okay, we're not going to mess up a good thing. Like that's the only, I'm talking they would be at that point 6-3 and coming off a win against Carolina to the point that it's like, yeah, I mean, why would we mess this up right now and throw the rookie out there? We're in a conversation, maybe contend for the South.
Could be. The one thing, and I don't know, that we're just completely guessing. We're throwing darts in the air right now. the bye week right after the game in Germany. I mean, maybe you like that, where it's, let's see, there would be 7 games at the end of the year. So after the game in Germany against the Patriots, you have that bye week. Maybe that's the point where they're like, all right, let's get the bye week in. Let's do some install. Let's get everything where Richardson is comfortable with it. Sorry, Clay Richardson is comfortable with these plays. We can mold him as we go along here, the rookie that he is.
There you go.
Right. But you have that final 7-game chunk of the season. Maybe. The only thing that makes me think outside of, hey, Gardner Minshew is just dealing and the Colts are winning way more games than we thought, we're not making a change right now. The only other thing I would consider is maybe they like that bye week after the game in Germany.
It's a good point, because you're going to have top-tier competition mixed in there with, hold on, let me check my notes here. Oh, yeah, 2 division games to close the final week 12 through week 18 of the season. You'll go against Tampa Bay. You go at Tennessee. Maybe that's a showdown of Anthony Richardson and Will Levis.
Ooh.
Then you got big punchers in Cincinnati on the road. You host Pittsburgh, at Atlanta. I mean, I guess that makes sense with the bye week added in there, that perhaps that's a real, I guess, true look in the mirror moment for the Colts, where they can say, all right, are we really, assuming it's Minshew through that point, right? Are we really still in contention to win this thing, or is it time to get some reps for the Rook and let him finish out the final 7 games of the season, come what may?
You're going to think I'm radical and ridiculous here.
That's a Tuesday.
Yeah. Is one of the better chances, and I don't think the Colts are going to have a game flexed in the prime time from week 12 on, but one of the chances, it's not just the Bengals. Make sure you're sitting down for this, okay? It's a potential matchup if the records aren't in the toilet, okay? That's the prerequisite. Titans hosting the Colts. What if it is Anthony Richardson v. Will the Thrill Levis, and the records are better than expected? It would depend on what the other matchup is in those windows, like the Sunday night, the Monday night games. But I'm telling you, that's one of your only hopes to get the Colts flexed into primetime. The leading candidate is at the Bengals. But I think next up, potentially, it's at the Titans the week before in week 13, December 3rd. I'm not going to the betting window and saying, I think this game's going to be flexed. I'm just saying that's probably the next best shot at the Colts actually being in primetime and having a game flexed.
Well, it impacts the type of temperatures that I'm dealing with in Green Bay, Wisconsin, because that's Sunday night Chiefs-Packers with no Aaron Rodgers is right now in that window. So
that's the question, is what are the Packers going to be like? The Packers have 5 primetime games? I mean, really, think about this.
Tell me, Jimmy, you value the brand more than players without telling me you value the brand more than players.
But you've got Jordan Love. He's a first-year starter.
Yep.
I know he's had more years, and that does matter. I mean, he's been in the playbook for years now. Like, he's been in practice for years now. That does matter. But what also matters is actually getting on the field and playing, which he hasn't done a whole lot of. So for the Packers to have 5 primetime games, you regress from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love's first year as a starting quarterback, most likely it's not going to be awesome. So that game is a candidate to be flexed out.
Yeah, I would like to think that there's a world where the idea of putting Mahomes again on primetime and Green Bay being halfway decent and it being the Packers prevents them from being flexed. But yeah, it's an obvious candidate when you look at where Green Bay's roster is at right now and the fact that they could very well be, I'm not going to fully embarrass myself here, but they could potentially have 3 or 4 wins at that point, and Kansas City could be still in a race for sure tops of the AFC, but does that really matter with that game if you put it at 425 versus 820? Probably not. So yeah, I mean that's another golden opportunity for the Colts. I don't know. I get it. As you look game by game, you do have to take the Colts out of it for a second, because you know that it is a, whatever word you want to use, rebuilding, it is a gap year, whatever you want to call it for the Colts, right? This is not a contention year for them, at least going in to the 2023 campaign. So you have to look and see, is there anybody else that can get you into the dance? Anybody else that knows the bouncer that can help you get through? And you look at their schedule, and yeah, there's not a ton of options. Like Cleveland, potentially, right? That could have been a matchup for them because the Browns, assuming Deshaun Watson's able to get back to where he was, they view themselves as a contender in the AFC. Early on, again, it would have been asking a lot for the Ravens, potentially, sure. The Jaguars, like I said, I would have liked that at the back end of the schedule, so there's really a more proof of product there. So you could be like, yeah, that could be flexed. Jaguars are in contention for the South. Maybe Colts surprise some people. Outside of that, the Bengals, and that's pretty much it. Like, unless you're going for the Bryce Young storyline or a Titans storyline at the back end with Will Levis, there's not a lot of true avenues where someone could carry them through the bouncer and get them into the club of the NFL primetime schedule. There's not.
I do. I like the painting that you're.
Thank you.
I like the picture you're painting here with the bouncer at the club. That's perfect. You got the velvet ropes in front of you. You got to know someone, or you're just going to be standing out there in the cold. Yeah, but there aren't any bouncers around. There are not great teams that you are facing with the schedule over here most weeks. So, yeah, man, I think when you go through it, it makes a lot more sense. I know there's an initial sticker shock. Like, they don't have one primetime game. It's like, yeah, they had a horrible record, and they've got a rookie quarterback that's a total project, and we don't know when he's starting.
I will say, and I think that most Colts fans would push back on this severely, but I really enjoy the international games, that accompanied by the fact that it's not the Colts losing a home game, right? They don't lose the home game here because the Patriots are the representative. If you would have told me, if you would have told me an opportunity to see Colts Pats in Germany, a little breakfast football to start a Sunday morning versus a Thursday night game in November or December against the Panthers, yeah, I'd probably take the international game. So maybe Colts fans should take a step back for a second and look at that opportunity and the uniqueness of that matchup. And heck, maybe you're going to have a family vacation out of it and go see Germany and tour some more of Europe while you're there. Like, there's opportunities there. Obviously, that's a cost expense to go do that. But I was surprised that they were the team that was chosen to be out there against New England for that international nod when they got it earlier this week.
Okay, Jimmy, I've got a potential betting opportunity for you around the corner. And then also, you and I are no longer friends if you engage in this NFL activity.
Uh-oh.
Okay? I'm dead serious. It's over. We just go our separate ways. If you partake in this particular NFL endeavor.
Does that go for Eddie too?
Eddie's dead to me. If Eddie does this, he's freaking dead to me.
I thought I already was because I like Sammy Hagar.
Well, we all have faults, I'll look the other way on that one, Eddie, because you are a great individual. No looking the other way. If you do this, NFL related, I'll let you know about it right around the corner. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. Now, listen, Jay Cook, Eddie Garrison, I legitimately love you guys. I do.
Right back at you.
I appreciate that.
Eddie was silent on that front. I just want the
Eddie's
record to be shown.
not quick on the draw right there. It's okay. It's all right.
Someone's got to make sure your mic's on, Jimmy.
He's got a little East Coast in him. You know,
does,
it's like Philly-style love from Eddie Garrison over there. But our friendship, it's over. If you guys engage in this, okay, that's how serious this is. This is how high the stakes are over here, okay? The schedules come out, and I'm not directing this at anybody in particular. I don't even know how many do this, and it's case by case. If you go through the entire schedule and go win-loss based on the matchups, I have no time for you in my life.
Oh, that's disappointing. That breaks my heart.
No time for you. If you go through on May 12th.
Push that to Monday.
And you're previewing, week 13 against the Titans. That's the Colts matchup. Colts at Titans, week 13, December 3rd. If you even utter win or loss, I'm walking out. I'm out of here. You know what I'm saying? You have no idea what the scenario is going to be when that game rolls around. Is Anthony Richardson starting? Is Will the Thrill Levis starting? What are the injuries looking like? Who's banged up? Who can go? You know nothing. It drives me crazy every single year, Jimmy. I hate to be the wet blanket of this.
Sure.
I know the schedule comes out. Let's go win-loss each week. No, I got a better idea. I'd rather go headbutt sharp objects instead of listening to someone go win-loss when you have no idea what the scenario is going to be when that rolls around.
Okay, I know you're going to like the next couple words out of my mouth here. Hear me out.
Okay.
So, I love, almost more than anything in the world, reckless speculation. I absolutely love it. And the purpose of it is, you're right, if just done by itself, it's insanity.
Yes.
It's crazy. Why would you do it? Mm-hmm. What I like to do, and what we usually do, is you have this moment at some point in time here, whether it's today or for the next week, where you have reckless speculation on the win-loss total. And then, when you actually have all the intel and the information in September, Eddie pulls up the H drive, gets that file, and we reevaluate and we revisit and we see, okay, that was when we were reckless and really didn't know anything, and we're just basically playing a game of Madden on our desktops. Now we know who the starter is week 1. How do we feel now about Colts Jags to open the season? So combined together, there's something of oh yeah, remember when we did that? Hey, how much have I changed now? Versus if you just do it into the ether on a one-off in May, yeah, it's a futile exercise. Maybe you still feel it's a futile exercise even with the added caveat there, but I like the idea of not knowing and trying to be oh, this is what I think's going to happen. Let me get in my crystal ball. And then you have a real clear cheat sheet by the time we get to week 1 of, okay, this is what's most likely to happen this year.
Okay, I feel our friendship slipping away right now.
Didn't even sway you a little bit?
No.
All right.
No. Not, here's my thing. This is just my preference.
Okay.
There's no facts here involved. It's my preference. I have no issue with looking at the season in total, looking at the schedule and saying, I could see for this team, I could see 6 wins, maybe. Ceiling is 6-11 or what. If you do the collective thing, I have no issue with that. But if you go game by game and literally week 3 against the Ravens, loss. Week 4 against the Rams, win. Week 5 against the Titans,
you have them winning against the Rams? Wow, there you go. Let's not go with that.
Just throwing it out. I'm literally about to punch myself in the forehead.
I had a friend who remains nameless for this conversation. He sent me a screenshot of his schedule prediction.
Yes.
Win-loss style. And I felt like in the brotherhood of our friendship, I had to do the same in return.
You got to respond back.
Eddie, what did you say? What did you say? Jump in a river? Did you hit him with that? Did you say do bodily harm to yourself? What was it?
I think he's saying in the honor of their friendship and broship there, he responded with his own schedule release in solidarity.
No.
It wasn't on top of mind to first thing do that for me until I got it from him. So then I sent it back. I was like, you know what? In the spirit of friendship, I bet he's going to ask me, what do you have? So I just went ahead and did it. Avoided an extra message and a dialogue there. Saved a little bit of time. And I will revisit this when it's time for training camp, when we know who the starter is.
Wait a minute. You're going to wait till training camp when we know?
I said before week 1, so maybe I was too aggressive in terms of my gap.
Well, at least with training camp, you're going to have somewhat of an idea, like who's out there with the ones. Is it Richardson or is it Minshew?
Not if Jim Bob Cooter has anything to do with it.
Hey, I'll say this though, I will extend a bit of an olive branch, because there are gamblers who will bet on games weeks in advance, and sometimes they can find some value that way. What happened there? You guys pounding Bud Lights in the studio?
I was jumping. I was jumping at the fact that there's already week 1, week 2, handful of lines you can get on. I was going to throw an example, and I was so excited that I also hit the other phone that's in here. So that's what that was.
Hey, no problem, man. But that is the one area where I leave a little grace or slack or whatever, right? Like I'm a little more open-minded is the best way I could put it. Is there are. Like, listen, I know some gamblers, and they're throwing tons of money on these games. I'm not doing that, but they are. And they'll bet games months in advance. Like, one of my guys, he'll be betting games in week 11 right now. And I think that's a bit crazy, but that's not dramatically different than going win-loss each week of the season. Look, man, it's the way the NFL works. We all know this. There are crazy upsets. There are wild outcomes. Just the idea, I hate it in general. It's just the principle of it, where it's like, oh, Buccaneers, week 12, win. It's like, what are you doing with your life right now, man? Why would you do that to yourself?
So, what do you think? You gonna scoop the 3.5 in the opener? What are you thinking there, Colts Jaguars? Hey, how you feeling?
Hey, that to me isn't nearly as crazy as week 13. The injury issues, we know this. The injury report matters so much in the NFL. We say it every single year. Whoever's healthiest, they have a gigantic advantage over the teams that aren't. And then the schedule comes out, and we just throw that right into the nearest body of water. And we're just like, let's go win-loss week to week. Let's do it. What do you got? It's crazy.
In response to all the gamblers out there, I mean, we talked about the opportunity for quarterback versus quarterback. Can I interest you in a week 18 showdown? Anthony Richardson versus C.J. Stroud. Texans, Colts open as 1.5 point favorites per DraftKings Sportsbook. That is January 7th, 2024, baby. That's wild. It is wild. My thing with it, I don't think that, like, I don't disagree with the thought, because maybe that one's insane. But if you're going to week 1 or week 2,
right,
I get it. You're trying to get ahead of the line. You're banking and looking into your crystal ball and saying, I don't know. I don't like the numbers that so-and-so is going to put up this year. I think that this other team's going to be good. I'm going to jump on this early point line. That's fine. The reason I don't do it, and it's the same reason I don't throw a ton of money around on over-under season totals, is I'm impatient. I don't like to wait for a whole, like, if it's like $5, okay, fine. But what you're saying, and some people do this, having like $100 or $200 out of your bankroll just laying there, and sometimes even more than that, for 4 or 5 months, it's tough to stomach. It's like, all right, where's my answer? Did it hit? Did it not hit? So I'm with you in that regard of the insanity, but I get the idea of trying to pursue value.
I get it too. I just think there's so much randomness to that. It's like, hey, maybe you luck out and it works out in your favor, where the team you're betting on is a lot healthier, the team that you're betting against, maybe they have a significant injury or 2 or 10, like by that time, depending on when it is in the season. But there's just too much of a luck factor right there. I don't like it, man, where you're just trying to luck out. I have far more respect for someone that says, hey, look, I know that this team's probably going to win a game that we don't see happening before the season starts. They're probably going to lose a game and get upset, and we didn't foresee that either. But the way it shakes out, I think this team's probably going to go 10-7. That makes way more sense to me than going week to week.
I think we should all, for the sake of havoc and chaos, look at week 18 and place a $5 wager on our game of choice. There's nothing against us. Just have $5 sitting out there, any matchup you choose, and then we'll revisit it after everybody else is having their New Year's resolutions. Like, well, is this bet going to hit that I placed in May?
That's what I want. You just stumbled onto it right there, Jimmy Cook. This is what I want. For anybody who goes win-loss, I want them to bet on each of those predictions.
Ooh.
That's what I want to happen. If you're just like, oh, yeah, week 16 at Atlanta, loss, bet it. Week 17, December 31st against the Raiders, win.
Even better, parlay it all.
Oh,
Parlay
yes.
it all.
Yes, absolutely.
I want money attached to every one of these win-loss picks as we're sitting here on May 12th. It's reckless and irresponsible is what it is.
That's why it's special. Love reckless speculation. It's great. You think Anthony Richardson isn't going to start until week 12? I think he's under center week 1 in my simulation. Let's see how our schedules play out. And then by the time we get to the actual week 1, we revisit those predictions from May. And I was pretty crazy back in May, Brian. I thought Anthony Richardson was going to start week 1. And lo and behold, Shane Steichen said he's sitting out the whole year. So I got to revisit this thing. Whereas you're sitting pretty with your, well, let's see. You have a couple kind bones in your body. What, 2 and 16 run for the Colts?
That's too many games there, Jimmy. That's too many games. I don't know how to put this in words. Last thing I'll say is I'm not against all predictions. I'm very pro predictions.
Sure.
But there's just something different about win-loss week-to-week predictions in May. I don't know what it is. It drives me freaking crazy.
So just to clarify, and I think we all have our answer, but just so it's officially on the record for Eddie, you will not be participating in a potential upcoming that's likely been moved now to Monday win-loss exexercise on the schedule. Okay.
No, I will.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I will not. I will be silently or loudly judging you while you are breaking down win-loss and all.
Are the Colts going to win week 11?
Oh, man. That's a tough one. They're week 11. They're
not going to lose.
That matchup always tests people.
I know, right?
Yep, whatever piles up on their schedule.
All right, it's getting more and more popular. The creative aspect. Who was the most creative? I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Fan.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. The schedule release videos. Still the trend here, Jay Cook. Still the trend going on. I love the Titans, their schedule release thing, where they just went to Broadway. It's a very popular street in Nashville, and they just asked people to name the team. They'd show them a logo of the team, and they were nowhere close. Nowhere close at all. This was one of my favorites. Check this one out.
This one is the Red Stallions.
That's the Atlanta Falcons. There's somehow the Red Stallions there. That was a good one. I also love this one, too.
It's a Pirates from the islands of the Caribbean.
That's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Is pirate from the islands of the Caribbean is what you thought the team was. But very funny. I thought they did a great job with that one.
I don't know if it's my favorite, but I enjoy it. Second time they've done it this way. And it's not even so much that like the content is like up my alley, but the Easter eggs are just chef's kiss across the board. And that is the Los Angeles Chargers. For the second year in a row, they went anime with it. And so it's got like, that high level upbeat music, and it's, like you would expect, just like animated shots of each opponent that are going to face off with. There was one where when they play the Titans, they have Derrick Henry as like a cyborg on an operating table, and I missed it the first time around. Over to the edge of the table is a banana and mayo in honor of Will Levis, so you kind of got that rolling over there. There was a Chiefs fan that... the Chiefs super fan that got arrested for robbing banks, and he had to go on house arrest, and like apparently like took off the said ankle bracelet and then was on the run. And both times it was that arc when they had the Chiefs pop up in the schedule. It was him removing the ankle bracelet at home and then being chased by, I think it was Justin Herbert in a helicopter. So yeah, the whole thing is over the top and crazy. It's tough to say that and tip the cap to a divisional foe in my instance anyway. But yeah, I really like the Chargers.
Yeah, some of that stuff is really creative, very funny. Some of it is like...
Oh, I forgot what they did for the Lions. They did...
I remember. That was about a year ago, and it was like... Is it this year or like last year?
No, so this year's... The Chargers... I'm talking about the Chargers video again. They did gambling numbers for gambling problems that you may have, and that was the entire announcement for when they're going to play the Lions.
I liked the Lions last year. It was It was sort of like an instructor, like a martial arts instructor. I don't know if you saw that one, but it was hysterical. He'd be like, the Lions are going to take down like the Eagles in week 11 or whatever it was. It was actually really creative. I thought that one was a lot of fun. I think that was last year, but all right, we'll have more reaction to the schedule being released. The Colts, 0 primetime games. What do you like about the schedule? We'll compare notes with Larra Overton. She's a host, producer, and reporter with the Colts. We'll talk to her right around the corner. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan today. Want to welcome in Larra Overton, host, producer, reporter with the Colts. You know, Larra, I was just saying, a lot of people, they get the schedule and they go win-loss all season long, like week to week. And I rage against the win-loss week-to-week machine here, where we don't know what the injury status is going to be. Do you go week-to-week win-loss when the schedule comes out yourself?
Absolutely not. There are way too many unpredictables when you're talking about looking at a schedule in May versus what you're going to see September through January. So I don't like to get too far ahead of myself. I look more so kind of big picture. You look at it in clusters of the schedule and, various road trips and, different opportunities that look like they could be, I don't want to say season defining, but, some of those opportunities where you're figuring out what this team is going to be and who they're going to establish themselves as over the course of that schedule that's just been presented.
Larra, I want you to hear me out for a second. I tried the same thing with Brian. It didn't work.
Okay.
Maybe when you get my perspective, you'd be like, I get it. And maybe that is something interesting. Or maybe you'll say I'm a fool and you won't be the first person to do that. That's totally fine, too.
Okay. Let's test out my open-mindedness, okay?
You do the reckless speculation now. You view the crystal ball. You try to map out where you think things are going to play out. You finish it, 10 minutes, however long it takes you, you're done. You save it away. Then, when we're about, 6 days from week 1, you reopen that file. Now you have all the information. You're like, oh, man, this is what I thought was going to happen then. Now we know what path Anthony Richardson's on, what path, in general, Gardner Minshew might be on. Now I can get a better feel for where it was, and you compare and contrast how reckless you were the first time versus having the knowledge now before week 1.
Okay, so you're saying like you're not implicated based on, what you projected earlier. You kind of have those caveats a little bit, right?
Just an initial draft of where you think things are at in May when the schedule first drops versus a real final cut for what you think is going to happen by the time we're approaching week 1.
Oh, I think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous to do that right now. I really do, because also we are still learning about Shane Steichen and what he's building, his vision. We're learning more and more as we've gotten through these off-season workouts. But when it comes, they haven't even played real football yet. You haven't gotten even, those true practices that you get in vet mini camp to be able to assess. So I think for the Colts, when you look across the NFL, they're one of probably the more intriguing teams and intriguing schedules that there is, because you not only drafted a rookie quarterback, you have a new head coach, an entirely new offensive coaching staff aside from Reggie Wayne and Brian Bratton. So it'll be really interesting to see not just what this team looks like week 1, but how different is this team week 1 versus week 6 versus, week 12 through 18. I think that you could see kind of different variations of this team over the course of, we always hear head coaches break it up in quarters. I think the 4 quarters of the regular season, this Colts team could look pretty different week to week, and you hope that that is an ascension through those 4 quarters of the season, and you kind of like where that bye week falls to help them out and prepare for the back end of that schedule.
I think it's fan nature, I was going to say human nature, to look at, especially the Colts, 0 primetime games. That stands out clear as day. And it's common nature to be like, what's up with that? And you're off and running in terms of a critical eye. What do you like most about the schedule as it sets up for the Colts, Larra?
Couple of things I like. I like opening the season at home and bookending the season at home. I think those are big opportunities for the Colts and how they're going to set themselves up this season. Really like that opportunity. I also selfishly appreciate the bye week after the Germany game because I was covering the team for Fox 59 and CBS 4 when the team went to London to play the game against Jacksonville, and it was so early in the season they opted not to take the bye week, and you felt like that lingered a little bit, and there was somewhat of an international hangover, so to speak, after that. So that's another thing I like. I look at, kind of a few opportunities in that later part of the season where you're getting good home games. Like after the bye week, you start things off at home against Tampa Bay. You go on the road for 2, but then you're home against Pittsburgh. And then you have consecutive home games at the back end of the season, because I think that with this team and building and evolving and how we're going to see things pan out with a lot of the young investments that they made within the draft, you think that that's where this team could be most exciting. The first half is going to be a little bit unpredictable with figuring things out and establishing that continuity within the offense. So to me, I really like not only the bookending the season at home, having those divisional games as well, and then having a multitude of home games there on the latter part of the schedule. Also, I mean, home opener against Jacksonville, potentially if Gardner Minshew is your starter, depending on, what they decide to do between Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew. I like that. I like Gardner Minshew going up against his former team, now playing for Indianapolis, seeing him out there for the first game with a horseshoe on the helmet.
So you're saying 1-0 going into that Houston game? I'm just kidding. It's okay. I understand.
You're going to pin me down, aren't you? Hey, don't forget, we're talking again next week, so we'll have a whole
I know.
to go rounds and rounds on this. So
I got to be careful. You'll be in studio
Thursday,
next week.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Lara, from your perspective being with the team, I know this answer changes since you'll likely be over there with the team, but when you look at the battle of and complaints of, we didn't get any primetime games, would you rather have an opportunity for an international game if you're one of the players, or like you mentioned, one of the members covering this team internally, or would you rather have a primetime matchup on the schedule if given the choice?
Man, that's difficult. I like the international games a lot because it's so different. Most guys at this point in their NFL careers, aside from the rookies, they've played in primetime games, but there are very few guys, when I look at the roster, who were on the Colts team that played in London. So this is brand new. Whereas in the prior seasons, even if you didn't have a Sunday night or a Monday night game, you always had the Thursday night game. So a little bit of been there, done that. And even the rookies probably played a night game in college, but they're not doing the international games. And I do feel like that there is something really invigorating when you go overseas, and having the experience that I did to go to London and to see the excitement and the passion that there is for American football in an entirely new fan base. It's not like people in Munich, grew up in the backyard of the Indianapolis Colts, and that's all they've known and loved and thrived in the era of Peyton and Reggie and Edgerrin and Marvin and, all of that. These are fans who have selected to love American football, selected to love the Colts for one reason or another. And I think it's going to be really eye-opening for the majority of these guys to go over there and see the drastic impact that football is having and that the Colts are having. And I think they're going to be really overwhelmed with how much fanfare and how much support that there will be, and how passionate some of the fan base is for particularly this Colts team.
She's Larra Overton.
I've already gotten tons of messages from Colts fans overseas who are trying to lock up their tickets and, figure it all out. So it's very, very cool.
Yeah, that should be fun. Have you ever been to Germany before?
I actually have.
Yeah. What part?
I went the summer after my senior year of high school. So, we did Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, kind of all in a 10-day trek. So I have actually been to Munich. I remember nothing. I speak zero German. We did do the Hofbräuhaus and all the typical, tourist activities. So I'm really excited to go back again, and I'm sure have a greater appreciation than I did when I was 18.
That's cool. She's Larra Overton, host, producer, and reporter with the Colts. Larra, what was your reaction when you found out that the Colts have 0 primetime games?
We had the podcast this week, JJ Stankovitz, Matt Taylor, and myself, and JJ predicted that there would be 0 primetime games. Mate had asked us for some of what we thought, and that's I said maybe 2. That was what I was going to go with. JJ thought 0. So I feel like that he kind of sobered me up and brought my expectations level a little bit. So I wasn't all that shocked, because the Colts did have a number of primetime opportunities last year. And, when you think about the Denver game and, the Steelers game and a couple of those other opportunities, they ended up not being incredibly thrilling contests. So I do think that it wasn't all that much of a surprise. I will be intrigued, though. You could always flex some things and, to see how things shape up a little differently with not just how the Colts are, but, this AFC South is an entirely new division right now, really a new look type of division with all of this injection of young quarterbacks. So it will be interesting to see what happens. Not incredibly shocked because, JJ kind of brought me back down to reality and I kind of got my, emotion in check by our conversation on Tuesday. But to my credit, I accurately predicted week 1 at Jacksonville. So I did get that win.
There you go. Well done. That's more than I could say. And I don't. We set an over under of 2.5 primetime games. We were off the mark completely.
Okay, but I was on the same page as you. I said 2. My one thing was I said week 1 opponent Jacksonville. Just don't make it be in Jacksonville.
Sure. No, I totally agree with you on that front. I want to circle back to the international scene for just a second. Larra Overton with us here on The Fan. You might not know this, but I'm sure that the logistical teams of the Colts have been planning or looking at this for months. When you look at them playing on the road in Carolina the week before that, do you envision them like pretty much packing to be ready to go to Germany right after the Carolina game? Or do you think they'll come back home, reset, and then take off middle of the week?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I would imagine come back home, reset, and then get ready to go for Germany because I think that you would probably have a lot to do, although that would kind of be an advantageous, you'd already be on the East Coast and you could just go ahead and, start your travel across the pond, so to speak. But I do think that you'll probably, want to evaluate some things after the Carolina game, probably evaluate your personnel. There's always a number of different things that could happen injury-wise and availability-wise and different things like that. So I would think, if I recall correctly, I feel like when the team went to London, they didn't even leave until Wednesday or Thursday. It may have even been Thursday when the team left the last time. So you will have enough time to get back, to take a little reset. Also, you think about it, just the personal side of guys wanting to at least get home and see their families for a day or 2 days before you take off again. You think about, the guys who have their kids and, wives and rest of their families who coach it, that's coaches and players who would appreciate a little bit of a reset and a bit of a breath beforehand. Also, things just like, making sure you get into little things that a lot of people may not think about from the outside. Getting into the massage therapist that you always work with, being in your own training room, just those types of things to be able to prepare your body, not just for another week in the NFL, but for the type of toll that it can take to have the time change, to go overseas, to, play in the morning, because I believe that's a 9 a.m. Kickoff. If your body clock hasn't completely reset. So I do think you'll take probably 48 hours or so at home before you get ready to make the jaunt to Germany.
Hey, Larra, good stuff. Really appreciate your time, and we'll talk some Colts with you down the road.
Hey, looking forward to it. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great weekend.
You too, Larra.
Yeah, you too. Absolutely. She's Larra Overton, host, producer, works with the Colts. That was good. Good stuff. She's been to Germany before. Well-traveled. I've been all over the States, Jimmy. I've hardly gone anywhere outside the States. Very lacking resume of mine.
I have been out of the country. Some of the stuff on the travel basketball circuit. We were in Italy for a time. My niece got married over in France in Lyon, so I was over there. And then, tropical islands in that regard. Went to St. Lucia for my honeymoon. So a little bit more, but I've not covered I've not been all 50 states yet stateside, so I still need to work on that.
What do you have still on the list there?
I've never seen the Grand Canyon. That's on the list.
Really?
I want to go do that. Yeah.
I think I'm down to 2 states. I think I've been everywhere else.
Jimmy, it's a good thing the Grand Canyon's not a state.
Well, I know, but I thank you, Eddie. Thank you for that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Talk about moments and stuff that I want to do, right? Like I've seen the Niagara Falls, but that's again.
He asked you what state
he
you
did. You're right. I dodged the question. I apologize. It's my bad. Sorry.
What states have you not been to? I've never seen the Great Smoky Mountains.
Yeah, I've never been to Wyoming. I've never been to Nebraska. I've never been to any of the Dakotas. Never been to Alaska, Hawaii. Still a lot of states I got to get to.
I slept in my car outside of the Nebraska Cornhuskers Stadium one time.
Check mark.
Check mark.
You got it off the list.
Got to do it. Got to do it sometime. It was cold then too. So I had just graduated college and I was moving out to L.A. because I had played guitar and I was going to do the guitar thing, see if I could, make a career out of it. And so I had this this Plymouth Grand Voyager, this minivan, because I had all my music gear in it. And I'm just like, I saved up my money so I could go out there. I worked a few jobs, and I'm like, I'm not trying to spend money on a hotel. I'll just like sleep in the van for a couple of hours. And it was cold. I left. It was randomly. It was right after 9/11, Jimmy. And so this is, think about Nebraska in, later September or early October. It was right after 9/11. I can't remember, but it was a cold night. Cold night right there. You'd like this too. Tie it into football. I drove through Denver. I took the northern route, which is gorgeous. If you're ever driving west, take the northern route. It is freaking beautiful once you hit Denver going west. But I stopped in Denver where the Bronco Stadium is. And I think Invesco wasn't that old at the time in 2001. But I remember going over there, and I had this, remember the old school Kodak throwaway cameras?
Sure, yeah.
I went to the stadium, and I was like, hey, you mind if I walk in and just take a couple of pictures? And this guy looks at me. It's right after 9/11, and he's like, no, you can't do that. I was like, okay, all right, now going inside to take pictures of Invesco, apparently. But, yeah. I think it's North Dakota and Alaska are the two states left on my list.
That's impressive.
But I got to get outside the States, man. I've been hardly anywhere. I'd love to travel. I'd love to go to Europe, and there are many places I'd love to see. How'd you like Italy?
I loved it. We were in Treviso, a smaller city, but we went over to Venice for the day, and that was really, really cool. I really like old European style architecture. Like you get right a similar vibe if you go to the right portions of New York and places out east, but it still doesn't have even remotely close to the level of age and history that you'll get with some of those old buildings and old cities over there in Europe. So I highly recommend it. I've never been to London. That's on the list too, in terms of places across the pond. We have some Irish heritage in my family, so I'd love to go to Ireland sometime. Yeah, there's a lot of great places on this earth, Brian. Gotta go check out.
Now, here was the betting. Not really proposal or proposition or anything like that. It's just throwing it out there, Jay Cook. Since you're such a high roller with your nephew getting hitched in France, goodness.
Niece, but yes.
Niece. Your niece getting hitched in France. Like, props to you guys,
He was, to clarify, her husband's a French national, so it wasn't just like it was a destination wedding. Like he was from Lyon, so that's why the wedding was there. But yes.
Like, the baller factor just continues to grow over here, I think. But how about this? If we are just dead set against each other, like, I don't know, say Warriors-Lakers tonight or whatever it happens to be, right? So the international breakdown here. If we're not going to see the Colts, how about my Finns, your Chiefs, loser pays? We just head on over to Germany. What do you think about that?
I would love to describe myself as the high roller enough to be able to do that. Fortunately, I did have some help from my family to be able to go over there to Paris, and the others two were work trips, so I didn't have to go out of pocket. So as much as I would love to make a wager like that with you, we already have a $250 steak dinner on the line in the next 3 years, so I need to measure myself when it comes to these extravagant wagers of one Brian No.
By the way, that would probably
awesome,
my favorite bet of all time. I love that bet. For the people that might not have heard us when we lock this in, we'll give you the Cliff's Notes version. So I saw this promotion right around the Super Bowl a couple of months ago, right? Super Bowl 57. And I don't know if I heard it wrong. I swear they were doing a promotion where you could go see the next 3 Super Bowls. And it got me thinking, if you were writing a list down, how many teams would you say they have no chance to win a Super Bowl over the next 3 years? And Jimmy Cook hit me with 22 teams. He gave me 22 teams over 3 years.
Yep.
In the NFL, where crazy stuff happens all the time. And so I'm like, you're crazy. But, looking at his list, you might end up being right, Jimmy. Your list is way more extensive than mine. So that's the bet. Over the next 3 years, if any team that Jimmy has, how does it work? If any team that's not on Jimmy's list wins it all, then I win the bet. Is that right?
Yes, that is
Yeah.
correct. They
So
have
I've
to
got
win,
10
they have
teams.
to win it all, though. Yes.
I've got 10 teams to work with over the next 3 years to win it all. And we'll see how that works
I envision a scenario where one of those teams is in the Super Bowl and you send me a text Super Bowl Sunday night like, hey, you better get ready to pay up. I'm like, not yet.
I'm saying it wrong.
Not
I'm
yet.
making it more complicated. So your list, you have 22 teams that will not make it. In
Will
your
not win
opinion,
it. Will not win it.
Will not
Correct.
win it. And so I need one of those 22 to win it.
Correct.
That's
Yes.
what it is.
Yes.
My bad.
Yep.
I'm making things more complicated over there. Okay, so a couple of things that Larra said that I thought were interesting. You know, as far as the primetime games, we talked about it at the beginning, Jimmy, is there might be some shock value at first, like, whoa, what is this? We got Anthony Richardson, number 4 overall pick, not one primetime game. But she said it right there. Shout out to JJ Stankovic. Huh? He said, I don't see any primetime games here. And when you really stop and think about it, it's a 4-12-1 team from last season. They've got a total project as a rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and we don't know when he's going to start necessarily. So when you look at it from that standpoint, I think it makes a lot more sense.
JJ's angle, I agree with. But we had someone not come at us, but give their perspective on Twitter. Eric Thompson on Twitter replied to a post about the show that I put out today about where the Colts disrespected last night's schedule release. He said, no, you have to earn primetime games. The atrocious Denver game is still too fresh in people's minds. And I replied to him and I said, I don't disagree with that, but that atrocious Denver game was just as much on the Broncos as it was on the Colts. Indianapolis won that game. It probably shouldn't matter. I just want that noted on the record. Denver went 5-12 last year, and they have 4 primetime games. Now, 2 of them I'm willing to hear you out on because the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and that's fine. And they also have the Bills on there. But 4 primetime games, banking on the illusion that Russell Wilson's going to be able to get back to his formal self, and the idea that Sean Payton's going to be able to steal the West this year because he's some type of magician in that regard. Like, I get it. Maybe Denver gets 1 or 2 on name and Russell Wilson / Sean Payton alone, but 4 primetime games for a 5-win team? Get out of here. Come on.
You're getting crazy on me, Jake.
That's not that
Hey,
crazy.
you've
4
got
is
5
wild.
for a 6-win team last
4
year.
is wild.
No, I don't think it's wild because you mentioned it. 2 divisional games against the Chiefs, and you're taking on the Bills. That makes sense. And you've got the Russell Wilson, Sean Payton marriage. And there's something about new. When you've got Sean Payton as the new head coach, and it's just 1 year removed since Russell Wilson was there. And there's that added intrigue of, does Russ still stink? Like, this guy was a baller for a decade, and he was brutal last season. So just the intrigue factor of, what are they exactly? And the name recognition. You can't knock the name recognition of Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. Like, listen, Anthony Richardson, he doesn't have that even close type of name recognition. He's a rookie. He's new. He's different. I know there's some intrigue right there, but you don't know when he's going to start.
That should buy you 4, though? 4 primetime games? That's the type of value that Sean Payton and Russell Wilson bring to the table?
I think it makes more sense for, let's put it this way. If I'm making an argument, I would make an argument against the Colts having 1 primetime game louder than I would make for the Broncos having less than 4.
I'd like to
exact-
point out, the Colts do have 1. It's
Well,
the
it's a
preseason opener,
stand-
baby.
They have a
8 o'clock.
standalone game.
That's
Yeah.
a prime.
That's a prime video game. There you go.
That's prime time right there.
They've made it. Woo! Yes.
They have the standalone
The dress rehearsal. Yes.
breakfast in London, Or, no, they're in Germany, huh? Breakfast in Germany. It doesn't roll off the tongue as much, breakfast, breakfast in England.
No.
I don't think so. Okay, we got a lot to do here, Jimmy Cook. We got a lot to do. As far as the schedule goes with the Colts, what do you actually like about it beyond what you dislike? Are there a few things that you're like, thumbs up, I like this. This sets up well for the Colts. And then also Anthony Richardson. Anything with the schedule being released that has you targeting, okay, I could see maybe week 7 or I could see week 10 for Anthony Richardson. Anything like that. We'll compare notes as far as that goes as well. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Paid non-attorney spokesperson.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. You know, Jimmy, I think that you're a pretty positive guy. You know, I think that you have and this is not a knock at all. You see the good. You have this optimistic point of view from time to time. Again, not a knock. Not a knock at all. I think that can serve you very, very well.
You understand why the lead up to this makes it feel like a knock is coming, right?
There's no knock. There's really no. I know it.
You buttered me up a great deal here, Brian.
I know it. It felt like that to me too, and I'm like, but I'm not. It felt like I don't know. Like we're about to arm wrestle. Mm-hmm. And it's just like the opponent's just calming, like it's fine, you know. There's it's just healthy competition, and then they blow the whistle or whatever. And it's like you try to win right away. No, I'm thinking of the Colts schedule, and I'm looking week to week, and I'm trying to consider everything, and I just don't see a whole lot of positive things here. I see more negative than positive. Now I bring all that up because you can look at things more optimistically at times, and you can point out the positive things where I might overlook them from time to time. Because when I look at this schedule, I'm like, man, I don't love having 4 of the first 6 games in the division. I don't love that, because if Anthony Richardson starts a little bit later in the year, I would like some divisional games later on because it's a more favorable division. That'd be my preference. I don't love when the bye week is because it's week 11. Let's say the bye week was week 7. So you'd have, let's say, the first 6 games possibly for Gardner Minshew. And depending on how that goes and where Richardson is with his development, maybe you start him a little bit earlier in the year where your record might be bad. Maybe you're 2-4, but it's still early enough in the year where you're like, we could turn it around. We could rattle off a few wins. You know, so where the bye week is in week 11, if they start Anthony Richardson after that, they've already played 10 games. You know, so I don't love where the bye week is. I get why the Colts aren't featured in prime time. We've been over that. But that stinks too. You'd like to at least see your team in prime time, especially if it's rookie versus rookie in terms of quarterbacks. That'd be fun. I don't see a whole lot of positives. Do you? Do you see anything that stands out?
Well, so yes, I am a more positive person, but at the end of the day, it's what is considered a positive aspect for this team. Is the ultimate positive being, oh man, like they're in a conversation to potentially sneak into the playoffs? Or is it, oh, they had a stretch where they looked really promising, maybe won 3 in a row or something like that? Like, is that your barometer for positivity? For me, I'll be honest, I don't have a ton of it either, because you mentioned maybe having the bye week earlier in the season. Let's just say for the sake of discussion, it's week 8, right? Instead of the Saints, you move that down to week 11, and week 8's the bye week. Well, at that point, Brian, this is what happens when you have your nice old handy dandy simulator in front of you, aka a little pen and paper going on here. I have them 2-5 at that point in time in the season. So if you're looking at that point, trying to reevaluate where things are with an earlier bye week, okay, I guess maybe you can string together a couple, but if you're 2-5 through 7 games of the season, and Jacksonville is able to come aboard like everybody thinks they will, you're probably out of your division race already, regardless where that bye week is. So that aspect of it doesn't really matter a ton to me. But then when you look at where the schedule actually is, and again, I get it. I know it's reckless speculation, but you know what teams on the schedule did in the offseason. You know what the Colts have done on the offseason. And you're really trying to, again, madden this thing and figure out, okay, on paper, where the win's going to come for the Colts. They have a soft schedule, grand scheme of things, like the 4th softest schedule in the league in terms of strength of schedule rankings. How much does that matter? You know, take that into account. But it is because of their own division, and it's because they also have the NFC South. So there's 4, 5, maybe 6 really like realistic winnable games that I see that if I was to tell you, hey, they can win this game, you wouldn't fully look at me like you're crazy, right? Like, it's not like I'm saying, oh, they're going to beat Cincinnati. They could definitely go into Cincinnati in week 14 and surprise the Bengals. Not saying that, but they could knock off New Orleans. They could beat Tampa Bay. Who knows what the Rams are actually going to look like this year? They could fight them off at home. Like, there are a couple packets of wins, but even for Mr. Positivity over here, as you've properly painted me, I don't see more than maybe 5 or 6 wins, even in a perfect world where Anthony Richardson starts right away. Yeah,
I'm really just looking at it based on the schedule, right, based on the road. And if you gave me a legal pad and a pen, like you have in front of you, I like that, Jay Cook, old school. The Tony Kornheiser note
Very much so, yes. Good night, Canada, all that jazz. Yep.
If you gave me the power to sort of write in what the Colts schedule would look like, it would look much different than this. That's all I'm saying is I don't like
the makeup of the schedule, not win-loss, but just
right, just the way
designed.
It lays out.
Okay.
Right. If you gave me the power to tweak some things, like when is the bye week, when are there divisional games, things like that, it would look completely different than the way this sorts out. Because think about this: you face the Jags in 2 of the first 6
you can't
games.
Have that. Absolutely can't have that. I'm right there with you. That's getting bumps.
Tough.
I would move up. Just again. In this world where I have all the schedule making power and no one can question it, I would move the Jaguars to like week, 15 or 16 and bump Atlanta back up there instead in its place.
Because that's the thing is, it's a double whammy when you lose these divisional games. Mm-hmm. And so the Colts, not only is Anthony Richardson a work in progress, the Colts team as a whole is a work in progress. They're off a 4-12-1 season. So when you've got a divisional game against the best team in the division from last season, who is the odds-on favorite to be the best team in the division this season, that's not ideal to have 2 of the first 6 matchups against Jacksonville. Again, hey, listen, this is steps to success. This is sort of what Giannis was saying. It's a weird connection to make, but Giannis Antetokounmpo, when they got bounced in 5 in a gentleman's sweep against the Miami Heat, and he said, there are no failures in sports. It's steps to success, which is garbage and BS and not true whatsoever when you're a 1 seed with the best record in the league. And you get
that
was
context
ridiculous.
is important. Yes, yeah.
But it could be applied to the Colts this season. Not all seasons are created equal.
Correct.
There are teams like the Colts who had a number 4 overall pick based on their record last season where it's not Lombardi or bust. You know what I mean? This is a steps to success type of season. And so I'm not looking for playoff berth, 12-5. I'm not looking for those things. I just hope that you see those steps to success, the groundwork being laid. I'd be happy with just Anthony Richardson looking competent and looking like, hey, he could be the franchise guy. He could be here for the long haul. I'd take that in a heartbeat.
Right.
Like, I think you could throw the record largely out the window because I think most fans are logical about where it is most likely going to end up. But I'm just looking at the schedule as, it's almost like a tool. If you're trying to build something, it's like, well, we need a shovel over here. We need a we need. So you can tell I'm not Mr. Home Improvement over here, right? Like, we need a shovel, we need a crane, we need some concrete, we need stuff, right? We need stuff to build this thing up. And can the schedule be one of the tools that can help build something? And to me, the schedule, it's more in the way than a tool to help you, is how I look at it.
And when you look at where the schedule maps up, not changing things, but actually just looking at throughout, and I'm not even talking about the win-loss exercise, which, can be very helpful to figure out where your brain is now versus where it is in September, but we don't need to get into that again. But when you look at where can we drop Anthony Richardson in realistically? Where can we drop him in to be the starter? And what is he gaining and what is in front of him in terms of repetition?
I love this outside of, week-to-week win-loss guy or girl, which is
great exercise.
Terrible exercise. Awful idea. Don't do it. If you're in mid-idea, just stop. Abandon ship. But yeah, where do you have Anthony Richardson starting his first game? What week?
I would start him right away. I've said that. If you think
week 1.
Hold on. That's not my answer, but I'm telling you, like, on the front end, is that realistic? I don't know, because there's so much question marks. And again, I get it. That's why you think the win-loss thing is what it is. I've clarified this is more for just reference purpose of anything. It doesn't mean anything. You reserve the right to change it. It's fine. But I would like to put him out there week 1 if you feel like from a processing standpoint he's ready to go, because the lack of the reps the lack of reps are present. Get him out there. If you feel like he is good on the mental side, the only way to learn and improve is by repetition. Again, if the offensive line is still broken and it forces him into bad habits, I know the risk. That's where I would play him. But that's also me probably being a little bit more idealistic than where the Colts brass are at this point. So, all that aside, I would place him somewhere in between week 9 and week 12. Because you're getting 2 games under your belt if you go week 9 or so. One of them, obviously, is the international showcase against New England. You have a bye week built in there, so you have 2 real solid games of film to adapt with and say, okay, this is what we like, this is what we want from you for the second half of the season. If you're going after the bye, so post-bye week for a drop-in for him there, again, my range, week 9 to 12, you look at your team as a whole through 11 weeks, 10 games, and you realize, okay, Minshew's been fine, but this is not a season that's going to bear fruit for us. Let's throw the kid out there. We're going to give him weeks 12 through 18 to get those reps and then evaluate in the offseason. I think that's the most realistic window for where do you place him in if he's not starting right away.
I'll go. I think you really laid it out well. Is that window seems to make a lot of sense when the Colts might.
Right.
This is, again, not everything is betting, but if you were trying to guess or bet when the Colts will start him, I think that window of week 9 through 12 makes a lot of sense. Because you get the bye week in week 11, maybe he starts week 12 against Tampa. That sounds a little bit too late in the season. I could see the earliest window maybe being week 7. Think of it, you're at home.
Yes.
You just get done with the 4th division game of your first 6 games, right? You're just at Jacksonville. We know how that has gone. It's been a house of horrors for the Colts. Maybe that's beatdown city, right? So you get a home game. You get 2 home games in a row against Cleveland and New Orleans. I could see week 7 being the earliest spot where Anthony Richardson is on the field. Realistically, I mean, hey, listen, he could be there week 1. I would be very surprised if he was the week 1 starter. But I see week 7 being the most realistic early window starting spot for Anthony Richardson.
I didn't want to make my range be so ridiculous that I'm hogging. Oh, I think it'll be weeks 4 to 14. So I tried to condense it down. But you having said that, after the words left my mouth and I looked at the fact that is a road game in Carolina, the fan base is going to be hungry to see him, right? They're going to be hungry to finally see him on the field. That week 7 to 8 range, if I was to lock something in officially, that would make a lot of sense to your point, because it is a home game. You're giving the fans a taste right away of, okay, this is the future. Everybody wants to have those seats filled. That's going to be a game where, if you wouldn't already from your Colts, either season ticket holders or secondary market purchases, you want to be there. This is, I was there for Anthony Richardson's first start type of thing. But I could see that making a lot of sense in the week 7 or 8 range.
I'm going to go week 7.
Okay.
I say he starts week 7 against Cleveland at home.
I'm going to go week 8 because Minshew gets booed week 7 and the fan base is just irate and frustrated. Like, all right, we got it. It's time. It's time. Let's throw the reins to Anthony Richardson. Let's go.
I'll tell you what, man. It seems like the first 6 games, it's just 6 games. I mean, that's going to feel like an eternity. A month and a half worth of games. You know what I mean? And if it's not going very well and you're losing some divisional games, I could see it being week 7 for Anthony Richardson. All right, coming up next, the pressure rankings here. First year starting quarterbacks. Notice I didn't say rookie. First year starters. Who's at the top of the list with the most pressure on him? We'll compare notes. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
5, The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. Okay, this is what I was thinking, Jay Cook. A little exercise for you over here. If you look at the rookie quarterbacks in the NFL, now that the schedules are out, we know who plays where, all this stuff, right? Like, which quarterbacks have the most pressure on them of the rookies? And I want you to include Jordan Love, first year starting quarterback with the Green Bay Packers. If you slot in J. Love among the rookies, who's got the most pressure? I'll give you first dibs because I want to go rapid fire with my top 3. But what are you thinking here?
Well, first of all, let the record show this is a terrible exercise, and anybody that's ever thought about doing this exercise is loony. I'm just kidding. All jokes aside, I'm still bitter about the whole win-loss schedule thing. But there's only one clear answer for me, and it is Jordan Love. And here's why.
Okay.
Because with the other rookie quarterbacks or other first-time starters in the National Football League, you would be willing to look at them and say, okay, there's probably a little bit of a grace period for them because it's still legitimately their first year under center. Jordan Love has apparently been, at least when he was drafted and how he was drafted by the Packers, the next heir apparent to their throne of a long list of generational talented quarterbacks. Whether or not they still feel that way or not, I'm sure if you give them some truth serum, they'd say, no, we don't feel really confident about this. But hey, he's earned his stripes. We'll give him an opportunity and see what he's got. This is Love's one shot. If he is able to show that he can handle being a starter in the National Football League, perhaps he's locked himself up as the next face of the Packers. If he doesn't, not saying there's not a path to still have a role of quarterback, but it's likely a backup or a third-string QB till the end of time.
Okay, I'll give you my top 3 here, Jay Cook. Let's start with number 3. First-year starting quarterbacks, who's got the most pressure? Okay, number 3, the Smurf, Bryce Young. Okay, number 1 overall pick. They traded a boatload to get him. There's a lot riding on his little shoulders. Okay, a lot of pressure.
Couldn't help yourself.
Sorry.
Had to get him coming and going with that one. Good job.
Yeah. Number 2, C.J. Stroud. Now, my thinking on this, he went number 2 overall. You know, it wasn't the number 1 overall pick. But I think he's in a worse position because he's still a top pick, and he's not used to the weapons in Houston that he's got half the talent in Houston that he had at Ohio State. I think he's in a worse position initially. Where Bryce Young, he didn't have a who's who wide receiver cast to throw to last season. He was still productive. C.J. Stroud knows nothing outside of having a who's who wide receiver cast. So him in Houston, I think there's more pressure on him to perform initially when he dramatically decreases the talent around him. I think that's going to hurt him. And I'm with you. Number 1, I think it's Jordan Love because he's going to be looked at differently than the first year starting quarterbacks because this is year 4 for him. And fair or not, he's going to be viewed differently. He hasn't had a whole lot of starts and throws, and he doesn't have a lot of experience on the field, but he's going to be looked at differently. And I think what sets him apart, the comparisons. We've seen Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre give you top production for 3 decades. And so if there's a drop-off, it's going to stand out that much more if Jordan Love doesn't hit the ground running. And that's an unfair expectation. But you know as well as I do, if he's doing something way worse than that, it's going to be crazy, the amount of backlash that he'll face.
The Packers have had Hall of Fame quarterbacks for the entirety of my existence on this planet. That's just facts. And most people within my age range or my generation have experienced that. That's what they're used to. We talk about Colts fans being just used to that kind of thing in terms of a couple years removed from, we'll always have contending Hall of Fame quarterbacks. The Colts are a prime example of what the Packers don't want to have happen to them, which is think that, okay, we already have the answer right away right now. We don't need to make any changes. Or, hey, you know what? We like this roster. Let's go get a patchwork arm like a Jimmy Garoppolo or something like that. I'm fascinated to see how this plays out in Green Bay.
Absolutely. No doubt. All right, we're going to compare notes with Kevin Bowen. Our guy KB drops by. Colts schedule. Ball is on the menu for sure. And we'll see how many places he's gone internationally. You know? We were talking about that earlier. What do you think? KB, has he been to Amsterdam?
I bet KB is over 1.5 is the line I'm setting for.
Well, you've got for sure
spots.
1.
Okay, so that's bad. My fault. All right, so 2.5.
2.5, you're taking the over?
I'll take the over for KB.
You
Under.
did take the over 2.5 before, and you see how that went.
Well, I also took a ton of overs this week, points-wise.
As
and
we
if
know.
Nikola Jokic isn't given an extra long leash and a 30-point blowout last night, that would continue. But thank you, Coach Malone, for leaving him out there.
Yeah, we know Jimmy. He can't bet unders. He only bets overs.
All right, I got KB. I'll take the under on KB. 2.5 international destination. You can get there fast, You have a honeymoon here. You went to. There's some places. You talked me into the over. You know what? KB's well traveled. We'll see. All right, Kevin Bowen next. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. I want to welcome in Kevin Bowen, our guy KB. Kevin and Query, weekdays here in the morning on The Fan. KB, what's going on, man? So we've got a bet writing on your life experiences, okay? So we're talking about the Colts international matchup in Germany, and Jimmy Cook has set the betting line at 2.5. The amount of destinations you've been to internationally, crossing waters in your days here on Earth. How many international trips do you have under your belt?
Wow. Boy, that is quite the bet. This must be a hell of a Friday final hour here. So I have been, the first time I ever got a passport was in 2016 when the Colts went to London. So that probably gives you a little bit of fair warning that not many
This is
times.
not looking good.
Uh-oh.
No. Actually, I mean, would I have needed? I don't think I needed a passport. We went to Grand Cayman when I was like 11 or 12. I don't know if that's considered a U.S. territory or not. For some reason, I don't have recall. Not that I would have driven to go get my passport at that age, but I don't feel like I needed one then.
This is the Jay Cook. I don't mean to cut across you, but this is the Jay Cook Sportsbook, as we've labeled it earlier. I am defining it as leaving the continental U.S. or North America, I guess, right? Because if you went to Mexico,
Well,
I mean,
continental U.S. might be better for you, honestly.
all right, fine. Then continental U.S. We'll take it that way.
Give me the over/under again, Jimmy.
2.5.
Oh, jeez. Yes, London was the first. Grand Cayman, I guess, at 10 or 11. I went to a wedding in Mexico a couple years ago. Puerto Vallarta, beautiful spot, by the way. And then I went across to the Canadian side of Niagara Falls. That's it.
Oh, man, we got close. We were
So
teetering on the
34
over.
One time over the Atlantic.
Yes.
So what's the official count, Jimmy? Where is it at the Jay Cook Sportsbook? Did we hit the over?
I don't count Canada. I do count Mexico. That's 3 times leaving the country. The overs hit.
Oh,
Cash your bets.
yeah. See, I feel like I'm kind of on the under for.
Yeah, you
do too.
probably
I
are.
don't know,
You
maybe-
probably are.
maybe
I just don't
my
want Eddie to
regular-
win is the issue. That's what's happening here.
Yes. That's all it is.
My wife, one of her good friends, married a South African in South Africa. So she went to that. She was in that wedding. So she did South Africa. She studied abroad in Spain. She really wants to go to Italy. So yeah, I feel like I'm kind of on the low end based off, again, maybe my peer group, but I was not a study abroader by any means. I didn't even do like the senior year, trip. My senior year of spring break in college was Portland, Oregon, to watch Indiana play
Yes.
Mexico State.
God love you. Yes.
And VCU,
that's
right into the
beautiful.
Indiana Daily student, Will Sheehy, baseline jumper to go to the Sweet 16.
Oh, yes.
That's
Anybody
great.
forgets that moment. Kind of an underrated game in the Tom Crean era.
By the way, KB, we'll get back to your international travel. We might bookend the interview with that. But what do you think about the Colts schedule in general? What do you like most? What do you dislike most about just the way the games are laid out?
Well, I absolutely love the opener for several reasons. First off, it's Jacksonville. They've never brought a road fan base to an away game in their history of existence, so there'll be no Jacksonville fans in that building. It'll be kind of that raw excitement you always have for an opener, no matter if you're scheduled to win, 10.5 games or 4.5 games. And I think it's an Anthony Richardson type of game. And I know I'm probably overthinking this, and I know I'm probably playing into more of what I want. But Jim Bob Cooter's your offensive coordinator. Where was Jim Bob Cooter last year? Jacksonville. So I would think he would have some pretty good intel into Jacksonville, what they're about. I think that'd be beneficial to Anthony Richardson in that start. No one expects you to win the game. I was shocked by the early line. Not to go down Jimmy's Sportsbook again, but I thought I saw 3.5. But again, I don't think anyone looks at that as like, oh, that's a game that you need to win. If it was Houston, if it was Tennessee, if it was Atlanta, Colts fans would be like, yeah, you really got to win that game. No one's saying that. So I think for all those reasons, boom, start Anthony Richardson out of the gate. Obviously the AFC South front load for the second straight year, stands out for your first 6 games against the division. And I think the other thing that probably jumps off the page at me, well, I guess 2, and I knew this before last night because we knew the opponents, but it was reiterated to me once you kind of see the schedule in format. One is the lack of marquee quarterbacks in your building this year. Trevor Lawrence in week 1 might be the best. Maybe Derek Carr, Matthew Stafford. I have no idea. And then the road slate. I mean, you look at the 7 road games. So you have 9 at home with the extra game. You have 8 away from home. Obviously, one of those is neutral. I think the hardest road atmosphere you would have had all year, Foxborough, is now in Frankfurt, Germany, in a 48,000-seat stadium. So for those reasons, I think the road schedule, I mean, sure, at Cincinnati, at Baltimore, those are tough games, understandably so, given the opponents. But I don't think you're playing at Seattle or in Arrowhead or Lambeau, Minneapolis. I'm trying to think of, like, the tougher road environments in the league. So, again, I'm not saying it is to think the Colts are going to win 10 games, but I do think it's one of the tamer schedules I've seen in my time covering the Colts.
Kevin Bowen here with us on the Fan Midday Show. You can find his work as a Colts beat writer on 1075thefan.com. And, of course, hear him on these very airways 7 to 10 on Kevin and Query. KB, we had Larra Overton on earlier, and I asked her this question. I want to ask you the same. She gave the team perspective. You're obviously covering them both on the beat as well as here on Kevin and Query in the mornings. Would you have rather had a primetime game if you were sacrificing the international trip, or is there value inherently in showcasing the Colts across the pond?
Good question. I think there probably is a little bit more with the international game. Again, I'm speaking out of someone that's probably lived in this market for my entire life. Anytime you get out of Foxborough for a weekend, that's a win. So I'd probably start there. But I think in all seriousness, anytime you get your brand overseas, I think it's a good thing. I know there's a lot of people probably, again, in this market that don't necessarily care about that, which I totally understand. But you aren't giving up your own home game.
Yeah.
We've all done the song and dance of a Thursday nighter. We've all done the song and dance of a Sunday nighter, Monday nighter, et cetera. So those are great. Those are fun. But we've been there, done that. Frankfurt, I mean, your Chiefs will get the first exposure there in playing Miami the week prior. But, I mean, it's going to be very new. I think it's going to be a lot of energy. Going to Wembley and going to London in 2016, that was about 9 or 10 years professional experience, and I still felt like I was at a Super Bowl. I mean, it felt. I mean, Regent Street was unbelievable on Friday, and just Wembley, even getting there multiple hours before kickoff, and how many fans were in that stadium. I mean, we're talking 40 minutes before kickoff, and you got 85,000 in there, and that was just something you don't get here in the NFL, just based off routine and maybe redundancy, if you will, of games kind of week in and week out. So I think the exposure overseas certainly is better for your brand. And in a season like this, I'd rather have the random 9:30 a.m. game than the Thursday nighter in Foxborough or the Sunday nighter. And I think you would be surprised how many Colts fans there are in Europe. And I think it's for multiple reasons. First off, you are playing in Frankfurt. The GM of the Frankfurt Galaxy back in the day was Oliver Luck. Andrew Luck's favorite team growing up was obviously the Frankfurt Galaxy. So you have fans that I think naturally gravitated towards Luck. You have fans in Germany that obviously gravitated towards the Colts, and they had Bjorn Werner. I would assume, based off that part of Europe, and certainly Austria to the south, Bernard Reimann, who we had on earlier today, is from Austria. He said about a 7-8 hour drive from Frankfurt. So I think you have that sort of fan base there. Obviously, New England has a fan base because they were so good and all of that. But I think there is a decent amount of Colts fans that I've heard from that listen to my podcast or just follow me in general that have reached out in the last 24, 40 hours and been like, hey, this is what Frankfurt's all about. If you're ever over here, blah, 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 this is what you should do. If you're coming over for the game, all of that. So I would rather take the international game than the, Amazon. But, again, I probably have scar tissue from watching Colts and Broncos last year on Amazon.
He's Kevin Bowen from Kevin and Query. So, a little earlier in the show, I let it be known I rage against the win-loss week-to-week machine, KB. So, like when the schedule comes out, and some people will go week by week, win, week 12, Tampa, loss. I don't do it. Larra Overton doesn't do it. We've got this guy, Jimmy Cook, operator of J. Cook Sportsbook. He is win-loss week by week guy. I want to know where you stand on that, KB. When the schedule comes out, you go win-loss each week for the Colts?
So I did not do that. I would say this might be the first year that I haven't done it. So apologies to Jimmy. Jimmy, what is the Vegas over-under, by the way?
Vegas over-under.
6.5?
Last I saw was 6.5, yeah.
The 6.5 for the Colts. My initial reaction is a 7-10 football team, but again, I refuse to do the win-loss. I don't say that annually. I don't act like I'm, Jimmy's my son here, and I'm like standing above him. I typically do explore it, to be totally fair to Jimmy, but I just think we have a huge outlier with Richardson. And when does he go into the lineup? When does he not? And if you guys want to go a step further, I mean, look at the rookie quarterbacks. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but week 2 is Stroud, right? Potentially.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Where's Levis? Week 5?
Maybe.
And then you get in the back end, and that's where there's a flurry of them, if I'm not mistaken. It's like, Bryce Young early November, and then it's Levis again, and it's Stroud to end the season. And then you toss in December, you could have Desmond Ridder in year 2. You could have Kenny Pickett in year 2. So, you have a schedule that could have 7 games of your 17 against first or second year quarterbacks. So that right there is unique. And then obviously you don't know when you're going to turn to your rookie QB just yet. So, I mean, I totally get it's May 12th, and I'm good with Jimmy exploring it, but I decided to sit that one out this year.
Okay. So, but you've done it before because you understand the sole purpose of it is because it's a fun, reckless exercise that you then look back at week 1 or just before week 1.
Bad idea.
You make your adjustments for where your win-loss was back in May when you had no idea what was going to happen, and you're basically playing Madden without the game, and then you reevaluate. You've done it in the past. That's the only purpose to do it. It's not because you think, I guarantee this is what's going to happen by the time the Colts take the field week 1, because you're right, Larra's right, as much as I hate to say it, Brian's right in this regard. There's so much unknown that's out there that you can't fully be cemented in. That's why you revisit it.
I feel like I'm a little bit like Jake Query and me right now, listening to you two here. Two sides of the railroad, if you will. Yes, to your point, Brian, nothing against where you're coming from here, but yes. And I am, and by the way, now I feel like I am trying to decide. I did hear your guys' debate. I'm a huge fan of the schedule release, by the way. Huge fan of it. Absolutely love it. And again, selfishly, like, it's a huge planning exercise for me. And I do think, in all honesty, I think players absolutely love it and eat it up because, whether it's, hey, I'm seeing buddies in this stadium or I've got friends here or, whatever. It's a home weekend, and if I can sneak away on a Saturday afternoon before it's time to go to the hotel because, we've got a wedding in town or a kid's birthday, all those things, I think matter. So I am a fan of the schedule release.
Okay, KB, let's bookend it with international travel here, okay? If some tycoon just said, you know what, I listened to the show, you're my favorite host of all time, KB. All expenses paid trip, anywhere, overseas, you go for a week, you just pick the destination, what is the one place you would choose?
If I didn't have to endure the flight, it'd be Australia, no questions asked. The golf just looks amazing down there. I think the country itself, from what I understand, is pretty cool as well. Obviously, from a city standpoint and just the uniqueness of, the outdoors within that country, I think it'd be pretty fun as well. But the flight just seems miserable. I mean, I couldn't fall asleep on the flight from Indy to Heathrow back in 2016. And they were like, you need to fall asleep on this flight because you're going to have to stay up all day once you land. So this is your nighttime sleep. So I don't love that aspect to it, but, to your point, if I'm going overseas anywhere, I'm going to have to go with some flight here. So I'd say Australia, but I'm open to ideas. What would you two say?
I don't know. Maybe Italy. That's got to be on the list.
Yeah. My wife's a big fan. That's where she would vote.
Yeah, that'd be on mine. You, Jay Cook?
I still want to see Ireland and London. And also, if you're given a budget from this hypothetical tycoon, once you get over to Europe, it's relatively easy to get around within
Can
reason.
see a lot.
So
Yeah.
I think you've got to check a couple of boxes off while you're there, Mr. Hypothetical Tycoon, versus just straight up to Australia. You got to balance that a little bit there. So there's plenty of Europe I haven't seen yet. Ireland and England are right off the bat there.
Yeah, London was a short trip. Again, we flew over Thursday night. I mean, that'll be another thing to watch as the Colts. Shane Steichen did not really. I don't think they went overseas at all in a couple of years with Philly. Obviously, Gus Bradley at Jacksonville went overseas a ton. It seems like the trend is you still go the Thursday night after your practice here, so you do the bulk of your work here that week. But, I mean, I don't know, the Colts playing Carolina the Sunday before. Will they just fly straight from Carolina? That'll be something that I know some teams have done. Typically, it's kind of West Coast teams that play on the East Coast the week before. So that's another wrinkle with it, but that'll be interesting.
Hey, good stuff, KB. Always good hanging with you, man. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll catch you soon.
Boys, have a great weekend.
You too, Kev.
There he is, Kevin Bowen. Kevin and Query, weekdays on the Fan. A couple of things here. You know, Jimmy, you've brought this up a couple of times. I think it's an interesting question where which would you rather have? Would you rather have the Colts with a primetime game, or would you rather have them playing an international game? And it's that, you know, early start time. I don't know how the players would feel. I mean, hey, listen, I think it could range where some guys would like, yeah, let's do something a little bit different. Let's go overseas. Some guys wouldn't want to travel that much. It would vary. But as a fan, you can speak for yourself. Which would you rather have? Would you rather see the Colts on Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night, what have you, or that early window? I'd rather have them in prime time if I'm given a choice.
For me, and it would vary, right? If this team was like a real contender this year, I'd probably be like, yeah, I'd rather have the prime time. But based on the 2023 campaign, even though I am upset that there's some teams that I think aren't deserving of as many primetime games as they have, I would keep the international game for a number of different reasons. Whether or not you are going over there to Germany or whether you're staying here stateside, and we mentioned this earlier in the week as well, the luxury that folks on the West Coast have where they can pretty much be done with the NFL slate by about, you know, early to mid stages of the evening out there, or be done with your afternoon window by the time that, you know, you're ready to still have all of your Sunday to just do whatever, is something that we don't get to experience, obviously, here in the Eastern time zone. The closest I've ever come to it was I lived in Chicago for a year. So you have the 1 hour time difference. And with this NBA playoff slate, that can make a big difference to your sleep schedule. But either way, it's a unique football experience, right? That's kind of what I've been banging on the table about. You know, you get to make biscuits and gravy instead if you're stateside to go watch the Colts versus, you know, your traditional tailgate of burgers and I guess the brats crossover. But you get what I mean. It's a different event, and it changes tenfold if you get the opportunity to go over there. Because like Kev said, even though I wasn't there, he's right. These international games garner a ton of support. They are, at least when it was, you know, in London, and the capacity of the arena has Super Bowl-like capacity to it. It's something that you're not going to experience anywhere else. So that for that reason, I would stay international if you were giving me the choice of that Colts-Pats game being on Monday Night Football versus being overseas.
And I'm looking at this mostly as watching on TV.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool. I didn't even really wrap my mind around going somewhere internationally as a fan. That would be fun, especially Germany. Because I think we've got a taste of London many, many years where you get the general vibe where how the game feels in terms of the crowd and being into it, and they understand a lot. Germany's different. You know, it's new. So I would love to actually be there to feel, does this feel like a normal game in terms of the crowd? Like, yeah, so there's going to be a little bit of a difference. Or are you sitting there like, this is totally different than what I'm used to watching an NFL game?
Yeah, I mean, that's half of the reason why it has its appeal. Because if you are again, this is an Indianapolis native, or if this is just somebody that is a Colts fan, but you're somewhere else within the U.S., it's a unique, one-of-a-kind experience. I know it's not the Super Bowl. I know it's not like a real championship or anything is on the line, but you're seeing the NFL continue to expand in terms of its outreach. And, yeah, if you like travel and you like to see what the older parts of this world look like, you can do so many different things and also go see your favorite team, too.
By the way, when we were doing our pressure rankings of the first year starting quarterbacks, we didn't mention one guy, Desmond Ridder. Now, he did start 4 games last season for the Falcons. But if you're thinking of Desmond Ridder, Jordan Love, and all the rookie quarterbacks, right? Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, on and on. Who's got the most pressure? Let me put it to you this way. Who do you think has more pressure on them this season? Is it Desmond Ridder, the Falcons quarterback, or would it be, say, Bryce Young with the Panthers, C.J. Stroud with the Texans?
It's probably Ridder for the same aspect of Jordan Love, right? And maybe he's not quite that far along in terms of, I mean, he's definitely not, right? He hasn't been in the league as long as Jordan Love has, but you're still looking at, okay, we've seen what you can do already through one season. Now this is a second opportunity where we want growth from you. There's not a ton of quarterback competition there for him right now. Like, I don't envision Taylor Heineke usurping him for that starting job. If he does, that tells you everything that you need to know about the state of
very good word
the
by
Falcons
the way.
right now. Thank you very much. I'll tip the cap to old history classes in Game of Thrones there. But Desmond Ridder, I mean, yeah, this is his second year now under center, and the same rule of thought applies in my mind with Jordan Love, where there's only so many real opportunities where you get to try to be the guy. I think all the pressure in the world is on him, particularly when you look at the weapons that are around him for yet another year with the likes of Drake London, with still having out there Kyle Pitts. I mean, you were expecting, if you're the Falcons, one more trial run with this guy before we need to seriously reevaluate where we're at QB.
I hear where you're coming from. I would actually go different on this one.
Okay. Why?
It depends on how you look at it. He's got more weapons to work with. So from that standpoint, man, when you've got Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Bijan Robinson and the two-headed monster in the backfield, Tyler Algier, that's a lot to work with. That's pretty good. So in terms of supporting cast, I think Stroud and Bryce Young have more pressure on them just based on who they're surrounded by. But in terms of expectations, or who gets called out the most, is sort of how I look at this. If Desmond Ridder is underperforming, does he get called out more or less than CJ Stroud underperforming or Bryce Young underperforming? And I know this is year 2 for Desmond Ridder, but I just think that there's so much more buzz and scrutiny and focus on Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, where if they're underperforming, I think just the name recognition, it's going to be like, whoa, look at CJ struggling, or look at Bryce Young. I think a lot fewer people are likely to be like, whoa, look at Desmond Ridder, the Cincinnati second-round pick, like really struggling. I don't think he's going to get crushed as much as those other guys would.
I agree with you in that context, but those in my mind are two different conversations, and here's why. Because you're exactly right. They're the rookies, the shiny new toys, all the hype was around them in April. You're already seeing all of them get a splash of coverage here or there. Even Anthony Richardson and Will Levis are getting it every now and again on SportsCenter, right? Like, that's always inherently going to be there. I agree with you. There's a certain level of apathy in terms of the national media's caring pulse or percentage meter on the Atlanta Falcons right now. Voices aren't going to be there nationally, but internally, what you just mentioned works against Desmond Ridder for that very reason of expectations. It's like, okay, it's another offseason. We've supplied you with weapons around you. You should be able to succeed here. And if you don't, and we're going to be bad again next year, maybe we're looking instead to turn the page and go after Caleb Williams in 2024.
Okay, we've got stuff to give away. Our earn away is like I like to say it. We're not just giving, hey, caller 5, here's some tickets. Like, you got to earn this. Is this an earning type trivia question today, Jay Cook?
It is, but I've learned that apparently I'm not able to give like trivia questions because mine sometimes outside of the Star Wars one turn in softball. So during the break, we'll likely have our roundtable meeting and defer to yourself and Eddie for the level. But yes, it should be an earn it, as we have. In total, this prize pack is a pair of tickets, Indy 500 quals, and Carb Day.
Yeah.
At number 317-239-1070.
Okay, get your calls on in here. We will give/earn away, if you will. And also, after we make dreams come true, do you like the NFL's multi-pronged approach? Okay? We'll let you know what that entails around the bend as well. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan, ready to make dreams come true. I think the greater Indianapolis area is on hold collectively right now. How many people do we have? 72? What's the number at there, Jimmy?
5.
5. Give or take 67. What category is the earn away today?
Well, so here's the issue, okay? Eddie has a good way in love of making me feel bad about myself. So I was asking him, hey, do you have a trivia question to go off of? He's like, no, I don't got anything. I was like, okay.
I
think
have one if you want to go with it.
Okay,
no,
I'm going to defer to you now.
Oh,
I'm not
no.
going to share what the question was. I'm going to make you decide just like we did yesterday. I have a question that I don't think is insanely tough, but you have to be able to get in the memory bank to answer it. Eddie has a different question that's probably very tough, and I'll defer that he's given out better trivia questions than I have. So, producer Eddie, do you want to take the throne for these candidates with your trivia question, or do you want to go to me?
It doesn't matter to me. What do you, Brian? No, you're the.
I just want it to be
tiebreaker.
Will Levis related at one of these.
Okay, I'll tell you this. Mine is in relation to the Indianapolis 500 in qualifying.
Mine is in relation to a event that happened last year for the Colts that involves the NFL schedule.
Ooh. I'm kind of interested in that. I know you were giving away indie stuff, but you mentioned anything NFL related. I'm kind of curious what that's about.
So does that mean you want mine?
I'm cool with that.
Okay.
Maybe do a hodgepodge. If they miss yours, then it'll
We'll go
work
to
in
Eddie. Okay.
Eddie's.
All
And
right.
you snake it. Yeah.
Okay. I want Eddie to go first though, because I haven't. The reason I say that is I do think mine is somewhat easy. I think Eddie's is probably more
Okay.
difficult.
For
So-
what it's worth, I did get it right when he asked me the question.
yeah, and that's usually how I take the barometer on it.
Oh, really?
Eddie's a
So if
diehard
Eddie gets
Colts
it
fan.
right, you're
if he
like,
gets it
this-
right, I'm like, okay, I need to rethink things. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yep.
That's the bar right there. Okay. All right, let's start it off there, Eddie. Hit him
right.
with your crazy indie question.
All right, Steve. 30. I can't do math, obviously. 27 years ago, Ari Lyondike set the fastest qualifying 4-lap speed at 236.986. Who is now number 2nd on the list for the fastest 4-lap average for qualifying for the Indianapolis 500?
Is it Scott Dixon?
Oh, wow. Yes. He got it right off the bat.
gate.
Wow.
Very nicely done.
Okay, Steve, real quick, before we put you on hold, you won anyway. Congratulations. Well done. We got a prize package for you that'll include a pair of tickets to Qualls.
Jimmy,
and
if he
Carb
gets
Day.
this right, are you sending him to Frankfurt?
The mystical tycoon that doesn't exist will take care of that. But I want to know, because Eddie, again, I didn't know that answer, but Steve got it right. Steve, we made a big deal last year about the lack of true home primetime games for the Colts. They were awarded a couple last year, but what was the matchup that broke that drought of primetime games for the Indianapolis Colts at home?
Oh, man.
It was a Monday Night Football game. I'll give you that.
Was it the Broncos?
It was not the Broncos, but you're still a winner. That's okay.
Still a winner.
I just wanted to get a pulse on the question. I'm very surprised, as Eddie is, that was answered right out of the gate like that.
I asked it a little bit there because it's 27 years ago.
Sure.
And then it was last year with Scott Dixon, 234, just over that.
So there you
Wow,
go.
Ari still standing the test of time right there. 27 years ago. That's
and
crazy.
It's, by 2 miles an hour, which is kind of crazy. And the fastest lap is over 3 miles an hour of that.
Where's Ari from? Do you remember?
I don't off the top.
I don't either. I think I should, though. I'll have to look it up.
Netherlands.
Shout out Netherlands.
Did you know the answer to my question?
So was this going back to last year?
Yeah. So again, I'll clean it up a little bit more for Brian too. I obviously gave a hint there to Steve, but there was a big deal made of the lack of true primetime games for the Colts, and I'm talking a Sunday night or Monday night home game for them. That finally was put to rest last year around this time when the schedule came out, and then obviously that's the matchup they played. What team did they play to end that drought of Monday night, Sunday night primetime games at home? That was the question.
I'll be honest with you because I believe in full transparency. I'm cheating right now because I put together all my schedules for years in advance, and I would not have remembered this. So I'll be honest with you, but it was the Steelers.
It was the Steelers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Was that a Pat Fryermuth game? Like, I'm trying to remember what I want to say Muth did his thing and had a couple of big catches in that game. Colts lost 24-17.
All I really remember from that game is that I had to go because my like among other things outside of her full-time job, my wife will help out and work the event staff stuff over at Lucas Oil, and so I had to go pick her up. And I just remember again that was the whole conversation still on the back end of the season of what's happening with this Colts quarterback room, and it's like they're probably not going to beat the Steelers. You'd like to think they could, but I mean, yeah, I get it. They only lost by a point to the Eagles the week before. Maybe this is something promising, but no, they lost 24-17, and the rest of the season was as horrific as you could have possibly dreamed up in a nightmare scenario.
I do remember Kenny Pickett playing. I don't remember a ton from that game, and I'll be honest with you because it got bookended with games that were way more memorable. Actually, like a couple of games, both in front and in back. So think about this. Jeff Saturday takes over. They beat the Raiders. We all remember that game, right? Then the next week was against Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. The Eagles survive. And, you've got Nick Sirianni talking trash to the crowd. And then the Steelers game happened, like you mentioned, on Monday night. Primetime game. Followed by Sunday night, they get waxed by Dallas. And then the huge collapse against the Vikings. So that Steelers game sandwiched in the middle of those 5 games, I don't feel like it was nearly as memorable as those other 4 games. Right?
It was 16-3 at half. The Colts then went on to score 14 unanswered to take the lead with 16 seconds to go in the third. I'm obviously cheating now. I'm going off of the box score. This is not straight from memory. I'd love to say it is, but it's not. Matt Ryan, I think it was a 6-yard pass, actually, now that I think about it, to Michael Pittman Jr. for the touchdown. And then Benny Snell had a 2-yard run early stages of the fourth quarter, about 9:55 to go, their go-ahead touchdown, and they went for 2, and they got it. They went by 7. So not a ton in terms of jump-off-the-page stuff. Jonathan Taylor had a touchdown in that game. Jelani Woods, 8 for 98. Matt Ryan, 1 touchdown, 1 interception.
What did Muth do?
What was the day of that game?
Monday night.
Thank you. The specific date, Jimmy.
It's November 28th, right after Thanksgiving.
Yep.
I was trying to, because I think the last primetime game was the Dallas game that they had. That's the same night Andrew Nimhard had the game winner on LeBron.
No, because they had another Monday night game against the Chargers. And, oh, my gosh, you talk about getting taken to the woodshed. Yours truly in that game. Yep. Oh, man. I love, like, some of these sports books. You can bet on the next play, whether it's run or pass. And I've noticed, like, most of these NFL teams, depending on the situation, it varies a little bit, but earlier on in the game, if they throw an interception, it's almost always a run. In fact, very commonly in the NFL, it's a run following an interception. Obviously, the game situation matters. If we're talking, this is the third quarter and you're already down by 10 and it's go time. Like, we're airing it out. They will throw from time to time. But more times than not, following an interception, it's a run. And that didn't happen in that Chargers-Colts game because the crazy Chargers, they're just throwing it no matter what. They're like, screw it, let's throw it. We're running the ball. Why would we do that? And the Colts with Nick Foles, he threw a pick early, and they threw it. I got hammered that game. I remember that one well.
Who'd you ask about again from that Steelers-Colts game?
Fryermuth.
He has 3 for 39.
Yeah, not
on
a big
4
game.
Targets, along with 17. No touchdowns. Only 1 touchdown pass in the game. That was that Michael Pittman Jr. Score. So not much like most of the Colts season last year. Well, not a ton of offense really to show for it by either side, outside of, like we mentioned, a handful of highlights from Jonathan Taylor and Benny Snell.
Yeah. I don't know why I was thinking he had a bigger game than that. 3 for 39? Not huge. Not huge. I don't know, it was like the game-winning touchdown catch, maybe. But no. I don't remember that one very well. All right, we got to go rapid fire before we get out of here. Jay Cook, operator of Jay Cook Sportsbook Worldwide Enterprises. We'll get some picks from you. Couple of NFL items. Do you like the new approach? And do you like this matchup? We'll get to that as well. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I'm Brian No. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. Okay, before your picks, Jay Cook, a little take your pick, if you will, okay? A couple of NFL items here. Do you like the new Monday Night Football deal? We got a taste of this last season where it's not a true doubleheader, but there are 3 times on the schedule where they will have 2 games on Monday night. And so they stagger the starts. They'll start the first game, and you get through about the first half. And then they start the next game, and they try to give you live cut-ins of the previous game. And they're like, hey, it's heading in the fourth quarter. But I hate it. I don't like it. Are you a fan of the staggered Monday night starts?
No, I'm not either. And ordinarily, I'm also kind of anti the doubleheader on Monday night, and the reason is because Sunday me that might want to hop around on Red Zone, you end up having less games, a part of potential witching hour-like moments, right? Because you end up pushing games back further into the calendar. But, I'm willing to hear that as, okay, that's fine. You want 2 Monday night games. Great. Do what almost every other sport does. I get it. Maybe you're trying to double dip and keep people awake and not have to worry about, this game's a blowout in the second half, but, I'm going to go to bed now. Oh, well, now that you have 2 games simultaneously, I just flip over to the other one. Don't like it. Not here for it. Keep it how it used to be. If you're going to do a doubleheader, that's fine. One ends, the next one begins.
It's more prestigious.
Yeah.
I feel like being in prime time, it's sort of like Sports Illustrated when they would have multiple covers. It's like, I just want one cover. It's more prestigious that way. And the better reason is on Sunday, I'm a maniac flipping around, watching as many games as possible. I got screens upon screens, or I'm in the sports bar. And it's like watching a tennis match, and I'm hopped up on some sort of illegal drug.
Sure.
I just like Monday night just chilling. I like just watching one game after a full smorgasbord on Sunday. I don't like the staggered thing. How about this also? First game of the year. The defending champion Chiefs host the Lions. Thumbs up or thumbs down on that matchup, just as an NFL fan?
Thumbs down. I would have liked to have seen a more... I get it. I understand there's some fun weapons out there in Detroit, and who doesn't love Dan the Man Campbell? Like, I totally get it. I do. But in terms of trying to simulate out what kind of game that could be, sure, could you have maybe a little Super Bowl hangover? Yeah, potentially. I would rather have it be a heavyweight showdown like a Chiefs-Bills or a Chiefs-Bengals AFC Championship game rematch, or heck, even Chiefs-Eagles at that point in time to open the season. Look, that's the unbiased non-Chiefs fan. As a Chiefs fan, they're on prime time to open the year, baby, as it should be. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't hate it because of Dan Campbell and the Lions are gritty, and can they take a step forward? But
it's fine. It's
just not a sexy matchup when a lot of these are built up with the quarterbacks, right?
Yep.
You can't sell me Patrick Mahomes and Jared Goff.
Yeah.
That doesn't scream this is the first game of the entire season. I just thought there were better options.
Chiefs Chargers would have been better too. Like every year, and it happens, and I've told Eddie and reminded him, and he told me, oh yeah, it just happened yesterday on ESPN Radio. It's going to happen, folks. People are going to pick the Chargers nationally. They do it every bleeping year, and eventually they're going to be right. But they have not been to this point in time. You get Herbert and Mahomes in another showdown. Plenty of other options you could have done there. Lions is just, it's meh for me.
I don't know that they would have cracked my top 5.
Really?
Seriously, because look at this. You've got the Chiefs playing the Bengals, the Eagles, the Bills, the Dolphins. That's their international game. I don't know if you want to count that or not. The Jets. I'd take Aaron Rodgers and the Jets all day. That's a road game for the Chiefs, but you understand my point, right? Like, there are certainly... maybe I took a couple of road games. But Bills at home, Bengals at home, Eagles at home. Dolphins is technically a home game, even though it's international.
Right.
I would have taken the Chargers or Broncos. Yeah, the Lions don't even make my top 5 Chiefs home matchups. All right, I'm wasting time over here. We got money to make. Let's do it.
The Jay Cook Plays of the Day.
This is me, all right? I'm not an athlete. This is my way. This is how I win.
Can't take an angle on the plays of the day from the spread perspective for Miami and New York. I can't bring myself to do it. So I'll do what I've done best, or maybe I should say worst to this point this week. We're going over 28.5 points for Jimmy Butler right out of the chute. Let's shift over to Warriors-Lakers. Steph goes for over 31.5. Anthony Davis hits his over as well. That's at 24.5. But ultimately, even a 35-plus point performance from Steph Curry is not enough. I'll lay minus 150 in terms of juice that I'm giving up. I'll take the Lakers on the money line tonight. Series ends in 6-3-2 yesterday, 6-9-2 on the week.
You make no sense. Yesterday you were on these airwaves and you were saying that.
I changed my mind. We're not getting 7. I'm human. We'll have to change.
Well, give me the dang Warriors tonight then.
Okay.
I like how you are just speeding through. You know, I can feel Eddie's eyes of judgment upon you while you're taking these overs, Jimmy. You know, like the point totals and the prop bets, and you're like, I don't care. That's what I think's going to hit. These are my picks.
Betting betting in favor of a guy who's already banged up.
Are you mean with Anthony Davis?
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's fine. I think he's going to be just fine.
By the way, what a terrible position the Lakers put that guy in. I mean, really, come on. He became a punchline. You're using a wheelchair? And now he's good to go in week 6?
Wildly crazy they would do that, and wildly crazy with some of the takes nationally against Anthony Davis yesterday. Truly baffled by all parties involved.
Yeah. Sorry, I said week 6. We've been in NFL mode. I mean, game 6.
It's because you're getting ready to do win-loss. That's why.
Oh, yes. I'm going to send you a screenshot later, my win-loss week to week. All right, JMV coming up. Enjoy your weekend. We'll catch you soon.